live once again. All right. So just so everybody knows, I go live every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, here on TikTok. We always talk about a wide range of issues affecting mixed race people, specifically here in America. Today's going to be an awesome live. All right. Let's get this thing shared. Oh my God. Oh my God. We can just open the app and immediately shit starts playing. Okay. All right, let's share it. Let's share it. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, let's see. Mic check, mic check. Okay, so my thing is working. Hey, what's up? Thank you for liking the live. I appreciate it. Much love from Seattle, Washington. Awesome. Awesome. Good. Good to hear that. Hope everybody's doing good. Let me see. So as you can see, we're going to get into some pretty cool topics. Should be pretty fun. Let's see. Congo Money says, I'm a monoracial black. Okay, cool. Cool. Congolese born, South African raised, American. Okay, so Congolese born, South African raised, but you have American citizenship. Okay, that's very unique. That's very unique. That's cool though. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, let me just get some of these invites sent. Who else can I invite? Let's see. I think that's everybody. Thank you everybody for the likes. Let's get the likes up. So let me talk about the schedule real quick. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be my adventures talking to our Opps. So there are people who either view themselves as opposed to us, or some of us view them as our opponents. And so I went on a live stream talking with them, trying to understand their position, their point. The next thing I want to talk about is, do mulattoes face anti-blackness? Is that a thing that can happen to us? And that's going to be a pretty big discussion, because it's going to require us to define certain terms and really analyze the framing of some of the words that we're actually using. Let's see. The next one, the third one, is going to be the usage of terms like black, white versus African and European to describe mulattoes. I recently had a conversation with someone, and I'm opposed to the use of terms like black and white. I think they're too politically charged nowadays. They're too ambiguous, too vague. And I prefer the terms African and European. That's not to say that those terms are like easy to define, because they're not. But they are, I would say, a little bit more precise than terms like black and whites, and they don't have those like political connotations, those like historical connotations that you think of, you know. So we'll talk about that, and then the last one is, which is better, Europe or America? I got into it with Jay, and he was saying that, oh my God, Europe is so much better than America and Norway and Switzerland. And me being an American, of course, I'm going to object to that. So that should be a fun debate that we're going to have. Jay's gonna bring up a bunch of useless stats. I think that stats that I think are useless when it comes to comparing America to to Europe. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see what he's got. Okay, so that's the lineup. Congo Money, you said you want to come up. Yes, sir. You can come up if you want. I'll just let you know that probably later on, once we get more people, we'll start talking about the subjects. But for now, I'll let you come up.
Got you.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you, man?
Pretty good. So explain to me your I guess your background. You're Congolese born, South African raised, but you're American. How does that work?
Oh, so both my parents are born and raised in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in a province called South Kivu. So I was born there, and then due to war around 90, between 96 and 98, they had to flee to a different country. I was born there, and then my little brother was born in Tanzania, and then we went to South Africa. We passed through a couple other countries before we landed in South Africa, but yeah, so I got my South African citizenship, and the rest of the family was born there. And then we came to America in 2015. And yeah, I got my American citizenship, and basically, Congo doesn't allow you to have dual citizenship, so I do not have a Congolese citizenship, although I was born there. I'm Congolese by birth and blood. So I have a dual citizenship, South African and American.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, I don't know. What were your experiences like growing up in South Africa versus like being in America?
Oh, there are so many similarities, but at the same time, simultaneously, there are quite a couple nuances and differences and discrepancies. Growing up there was a mind opener because I'm pretty much South African culturally, because most of my teenage years was spent there. I went to first grade elementary school. We call it primary school out there. I went to high school, secondary school out there, first year of college out there. And then when I came here, I had to restart again from freshman year of high school because I didn't have my transcripts. But I witnessed a lot of pretty much of what you're talking about. Although I'm monoracially black, I witnessed it firsthand because I had I don't know if I'm allowed to use the term colored. But,
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, but in America, we call them mulattoes or mixed race people. So what had happened back in '94, apartheid ended. But before that, the Dutch took over. Mostly the Dutch kind of orchestrated the whole, separation by complexion, not race, complexion. So what had happened was a white man had a kid with a black woman, and then the product of that was a mixed race child, right? So when that person grew up to be an adult, they'd make sure that person married his own kind or her own kind. So they'd make sure a mixed race girl or boy made babies to a point where, they kept it that way, purebred, so to speak, for lack of a better term. And they made sure that generations over, they couldn't trace back where they were just black and white. So there was this whole, pure breeding type of mentality by the Dutch, right? So hence why we have a whole different, connotation to the word colored or mixed race in South Africa compared to America. And I went to school, integrated school, with coloreds or mixed race people and blacks and Indians, and then you have others who were they could trace back where they were just black and white because the parent would be Indian and the mom would be Indian and the dad would be black, or it would be a white mom and a black dad, or it would be an Indian dad and a black woman, that type of style, that type of dynamic. And I would hear people call each other names, and sometimes it was we call it racial bias, which is a fancy word for just racism, right? Or colorism and tribalism, all these isms, right? And they would be masked in jokes. So if you weren't thick skinned, you'd get harassed and you'd fold, you know what I mean? So last time you were on the panel with some ladies, I kind of listened, stayed in the comment. I figured I'm monoracial, so I probably won't have a chance to come up, but it was quite profound, and I listened to you, hence why I followed you. And it was disheartening listening to some of the ladies because I could relate to that. Although I didn't get the firsthand harassments and discrimination, I witnessed my friends get called out for being mixed raced, or they would use certain words in their native tongue to harass these people. So it was quite mind blowing and a learning experience as well. So I'm sorry to be long winded, but
No, that's
yeah,
fine.
that's pretty much my experience. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess I think you said when you were on that live, you kind of related to some of the things that were being said. Like what specifically?
Yeah, there was a lady that asserted that growing up, she would have this conundrum of there was this reluctancy to join either race or it was kind of like a polarized dynamic, right? And she didn't know what to identify with because sometimes at school or in workplaces or in social settings, she would put herself in groups where they were monoracially black, and she wouldn't get accepted, for the lack of a better term. And then she would try to click with the white side or whatnot, and then she would experience the same thing. But they were just projecting all these, negativity towards her in different ways. So she wasn't black enough for the blacks, or she wasn't white enough for the whites. And if I'm not mistaken, there was another one that was Native American and Mexican. If I'm not mistaken, there was a gentleman who was Mexican and Native American, and he said something within the lines of people using certain terminologies in Spanish to kind of ostracize him. And I could kind of recall a time where my friends in high school, they were called brainos. So they kind of like how the Chinese are called smarties, or
Yeah.
there was always this connotation of them knowing how to do math better than other races or other peoples. So yeah, so the mixed race people in South Africa, a lot of them, especially in a city called Durban, which is on the eastern region of South Africa, a lot of the coloreds in South Africa, in that specific region, they are known for doing tech work. So if you're a colored and you don't live up to your parents' expectations or whatnot, and they make fun of you, and they're like, you might not be a real colored because you don't really live up to the expectations of the colored people, so you're not really a good braino, you know what I mean? So that's why they call them brainos. And the charos would be I know it's a borrowed word from the Mexican Spanish. The charos are pretty much Indians who they're descendants of the indentured servants of who were brought to South Africa by the British. And so there are certain terminologies, slang terms for these people, and
Yeah.
sometimes depending on the tone of the person talking to them, you can tell whether they are harassing them or discriminating against them, or they're just being playful. So I could kind of see that. I could kind of recall a time where I was with my friends and I would be called Blackie or Darky, and they would be called Brainos or Charos. Hey, Charo, get off my seat. Only blacks are allowed here. Things like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. And because you're from so many different places, you kind of I don't know, you've been exposed to that kind of behavior in different countries because, obviously different countries handle race and ethnicity and all those things differently. And we usually hear every now and then we'll have people from South Africa that will tell us about their experience and stuff like that. So we get a little taste of it.
Hmm.
But it's usually from the perspective of someone who's colored. For someone
Yeah.
like you, who's monoracial black, as you said, that's going to be a little bit different. But it's still pretty interesting how you said it.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're an empath, like if you have friends of different walks of life, different ethnicities, backgrounds, you kind of feel for them. It's like you feel what they feel because you're so close to them, and it kind of hurts. And I try to be as open minded as I can, so I try to pick friends, that are like on the same, intellectual plateau as me, you know. And I have no room for discrimination against the skin color, but unfortunately that's what I gotta I gotta face in this day and age. And being a young man, there's so many people who are older than us that are still hold on to the old ways,
Yeah.
especially in South Africa. Even here in America, like I've had older people ask me questions like, uh so did you grow up in a zoo, or things like that, or like very stupid questions, and
Yeah.
I'll just play along, and
Hmm.
then I always wondered if I was mixed race or I was from Europe, would I be questioned the same way I'm being questioned right now?
Yeah. So
So
that's a
yeah.
question I have is how was your experience with black people here in America?
Yeah, so it differed. It was different depending with where I was at and who I came across. Like the first time I went to a recreational park in Spokane, Washington, I went to play basketball, and mind you, this is like my third, or within the first 3 months of living in America. I was in Spokane, which is on the eastern part of Washington State. I grabbed my basketball that I got from Goodwill, went to play basketball, and I found a bunch of young African American men playing basketball, young men and old men, and they were playing a game called 21. And I tried to join in, and there was this one who gave me a very bad look. Like he looked at me like he wanted to do something bad to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, what's going on? You good? And he's like, nah. We can tell you ain't one of us. I was like, bro, what you mean? And I was like, and he was like, we only allow DOS to play with us. So I didn't know what that meant, and I asked the other guys what it meant, and they all he kind of seemed like one of the head honchos of the group. So it seemed like he was giving them the signal not to talk to me. So they wanted to talk to me, but due to them being underneath this guy, they didn't want to talk to me. So I went home, looked up the definition of DOS, and Google gave me a bunch of definitions, but I figured something was missing, so I typed in into the Urban Dictionary DOS, and it turned out DOS stood for descendant of slaves. And one of them had spoken under their breath, and they were like, "Oh, you sold us to the American people." So so that was one of my first experiences here, and I didn't think much of it back then because my young self just wanted to play a game of basketball. I wasn't thinking
Yeah.
political or racial or ethnic stuff.
That's
So
interesting
yeah.
because I've heard that term, but as ADOS, like American Descendants of Slaves. I haven't yet heard it as just DOS, but it makes sense
Yeah.
because I hear a lot of that online. A lot of that kind of like anti-African kind of
Mm-hmm.
mentality from Black Americans, but I didn't realize. I don't. I still don't know how common it is in the real world. But you're right here telling me you experienced it in the real world, and that's kind
Yep.
of crazy to me. I didn't realize that it was something like that, and even in a place like Spokane, Washington, I wouldn't have expected it coming from there.
Yeah, and I came to find out that some of the kids in that group, or actually, I ended up seeing some of them in high school because I was here. I came here around the summer of 2015, and we hadn't opened school yet, so we were on summer break, you know. And when school opened, some of those kids in that group, in that circle, I went to school with, and they were actually cool people, you know. And they were like, "Don't worry about what my uncle said. He's just so." Old. He's into that vintage stuff, you know. And I was like, well, just let him know I love him and I have nothing against, African Americans or fundamental blacks, you know. And I've always had this sorrowful feeling every time an African American would look at me in the face and tell me, hey, your people sold my people. And I'll just shut up and let him talk, you know. I try not to be defensive and just let him, vent out, talk how they feel, and there are some who are very good. They hug me and they're like, oh, you're African, and they kind of show this genuine interest in the culture. And I've taught a couple people how to speak Swahili because I grew up speaking Swahili, and then you have some who are reluctant, and some of quite condescending, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, because I slept over at a friend's house one time, and his dad was trying to show me how to use the bathroom, like, so this is what you do, in a very condescending manner. And I was like, Mr. Charles, I might be from Africa, but I'm not from the National Geographic Africa, okay? So I was trying to let him know, like, I know stuff and I'm well read, not to boast or anything, but
That's
you know
insane that he was like, oh, I have to potty train this guy. That's so
right, right,
crazy.
right. And it's like, this is a microwave. So you open it up, you put stuff in there, and you press a specific number, to your liking, and it's gonna spin around and warm up your food. And I'm like, bro, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, I know how to use these things. We have those in Africa. It's like, oh, really? Just tell me more. Very condescending. And he was a military guy, so. And I was like, bro, you should know better because you've been to Ethiopia, you've been to Kenya, you've been to other places in Africa. So you've seen people use these things. Matter of fact, some of the people that invented some of these things were from Africa originally.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a mixture, man. It depends with who you run into. It's
Yeah.
individual stuff.
Iberian Mulato says he might as well have offered you a pee pad. Yeah, that's insane.
Right,
Like,
right.
I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that because I've traveled like a lot since I was a kid, and so like I've just known that like in almost every part of the world, like people have like pretty much everything you know
Mm-hmm.
that we would think of. Yeah, certain things may only be accessible to like the rich or maybe the upper middle class, but they pretty much have all the same things.
Yep.
But I think so many Americans, just in general, they don't travel or they don't really do much learning about,
Research. Yep.
yeah, like foreign countries and things like that, because you don't necessarily have to travel to know that in Africa they have toilets and microwaves. You
Right.
could just like watch a documentary about certain countries or certain cultures and everything, and you'll find that out. But I think there's this stereotype that Americans have this mentality that they're like better than everybody and they're on the
Yeah.
more advanced, on the cutting edge. And
Yep.
a lot of times people, I think, mistakenly believe that, oh, that only happens with white people. They're the only ones that think that and look down on other countries. But obviously not. It can
Yep.
be any American, no matter the color, can
Yep.
have this mentality that they're supremely more civilized and advanced than other
Yeah.
people.
They definitely have this superiority complex, and surprisingly enough, there are some Africans who've been here, like I'm talking real Africans who came from the continent of Africa within the 21st century. They've been here longer than you, and they think they're superior than you. So they've been Americanized in a bad way, because I believe there's a good way, right? So you'll come here fresh off the boat, so to speak, and then they'll introduce you to their family members, and once you settle in, they'll try to make you feel adjusted, to the culture, and they'll be condescending. I don't know whether it's intentionally done or unintentionally, but you could kind of tell they're portraying this superiority over you. So
Yeah.
it sucks. It sucks, man. But I had to learn the hard way and the slow way, to not pay it no mind and not take it to heart and just get what I want. If I'm gonna get food from them, I'm new here, so I don't have much. I'm just speaking like a person who just got here, right? Like I'm just gonna endure and just get what I want. Uh, it doesn't matter how they do it as long as they give it to me.
Yeah.
So I had to toughen up and not be emotionally driven when it came to things like that.
That's a good
It's
mentality
just
to
crazy.
have.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I had to learn the hard way. At first, I used to be ready to squabble up.
Yeah.
Like what? Why are you talking to me like that? Pa pa. But I had to learn the hard way to just let things fly. Let them be.
Yeah, that's cool. I had one question. This is slightly unrelated, but it's something I've noticed with a lot of foreigners that come here, and I've noticed that whenever I try to demonstrate like an interest in their culture or their language, they're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
iffy, like they don't want to talk about it or anything. Like
Mm,
I've met Russians, I've met people like from Brazil, from all parts of the world, and almost every time, whenever I'm like, hey, like teach me
mm-hmm.
something in your language or tell me something about your culture, they're like, they do it, but it's almost like they don't want to. And so it interested
Yeah.
me that you said you had taught them like Swahili and stuff like that. So what's your view when like an American, let's say, shows any kind of interest in like your culture or languages?
I actually like it. I actually think it's um I commend it, So I feel like I'm very inquisitive myself. So when I meet another inquisitive individual, I get excited. I might not show it right away, but I do. I'm always like really willing to teach people stuff as long as I get something in return as far as like knowledge and information. You know. So I feel like it's way better that way than people assuming stuff, or asking a
Gotcha.
question, but in a very condescending tone. Like I had one teacher ask me if, I don't know what kind of question it was, but do you guys speak African? Like, and so my very right, and I was like, no, there's no such thing as African. There's
Yeah.
so many languages, depending with where you want to go, which country you're thinking of. I could tell you what language they speak, and if I speak it, I'll teach it.
Yeah.
And
So you're
yeah,
from the Congo, but I'm pretty sure the Congo speaks way more than one language, right?
yeah, they speak about, I want to say they have about, let me see, Swahili, Lingala, French. So they have three official languages, and then they have about 300 languages. I mean, some people call them dialects, but some of these languages are totally different from each other. So they do not, you know, um, they do not fit the description of a dialect.
Yeah.
So they're totally different languages, different syntax, grammatical rules, and all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense because I guess they're not like mutually intelligible
Yeah.
because there's I'm not sure if this counts as like a dialect, but I know like in Italy, like they don't all speak the same kind of Italian. Like
Yes.
every region has a different kind of Italian, and
Yeah.
I actually got to experience it myself. I had a bunch of Italian friends. One was from Naples, one was from Sicily, another one
Yep.
from another part of southern Europe, southern Italy, and they were
Mm-hmm.
explaining to me all the differences in their dialects of Italian. And I think for the most part they're mutually intelligible, but it's like there'll be like, you know, an entire sentence where they're like, I have no idea what he just said. And then they'll go back to understanding the rest of it and stuff. So it's, yeah, Iberian says Sicilian is completely different from the other Italian dialects. It's kind of its own thing. Yeah, I think Sicilian's one of those more extreme cases. And I think Sardinian is too. It's pretty different. So it makes sense. But you, so you grew up speaking Swahili. But did your parents only know Swahili, or did they know like multiple languages too?
Oh, yeah. So they knew multiple languages. My dad and my mom, they're from, just for the context, we are from Eastern Congo. So for the most part, the people from the capital city called Kinshasa, they speak a language called Lingala. They're called Bakinois. Kin, Kin, ba is just a prefix. Noir just means children of. So the children of kin, right? So the Kinshasa kin, so it's a whole tribe, you know.
Yeah.
So, but due to the metropolitan nature of that city, you know, you have different tribes having pull factors, right? They get pulled into that city due to work and all these other things. And they speak Lingala and French for the most part, you know. French, you know why, due to the colonial, you know, impact or whatnot.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it's almost inevitable to live in Congo, growing up in Congo, and not learn Lingala or French, because in school it was mandatory for you to speak French, and then in social settings it was almost mandatory for you to speak Lingala or understand it for the most part, you know. So both my parents, they speak those two languages, and then they have their own native tongue, which is called Kifuliru. So Bafuliru people are from Eastern Congo, and there are about 4 or 5 tribes within that state that my parents are from. So they kind of understand all these other the languages from these, you know, 5 tribes, you know, 4
Yeah.
tribes, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we are separated by a lake called Lake Tanganyika. So we're separated from Burundi and Tanzania. So by the way, Swahili is predominantly spoken in Tanzania. That's the hub of Kiswahili.
Okay.
Kenya, Congo, and Burundi and Rwanda, they you know, I think Rwanda is less of a Swahili speaking, but there are some travelers from Rwanda that speak Swahili. So
Yeah.
we grew up. If you're from the east of Congo, you're more likely to speak Swahili more than a person from the, you know, western part of Congo or northern and southern part of Congo.
Gotcha.
So
So I want to jump in real
yeah.
quick. Hey everybody, I see people coming in. Let's get the likes up. Let's tap the screen. Let's get the likes up. I do have I don't know what you would call it, an agenda for today for some topics to talk about. Right now, I brought up Congo Money to the panel because he's Congo born, raised in South Africa, and now he's in America. And to me, that was just a really interesting dynamic, a really interesting backstory. So I'm trying to like understand his experiences a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's pretty much how I expected, how you described it, because I knew a friend who was Filipina, and she spoke English. Then she spoke Tagalog, which is like the national language.
Yeah, the standard Tagalog language, yeah.
Yeah, and then she spoke like a regional language. She was from Cebu, I think. So
Yeah.
I was like, damn, like 3 different languages. So, and I also had an African coworker. I think
Yeah.
he was from Ghana or Gambia. He was from Gambia. And
Okay.
his situation was very similar to yours. I don't know if he spoke French or English
Yeah,
as like
yeah,
the.
they speak French in Gambia. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Gambia, Senegal used to be one country, but they got separated by, you know, colonial people.
Gotcha. So yeah, he had a similar case to yours. He had like, you know, the lingua franca that was like a European language, and then a lingua franca that's an African language, and
Yeah.
then like a regional language. And he was like telling me, oh, and then we speak this other language that's just like in the streets. And I'm like, bro, how many languages do you speak?
Yeah, it's almost mandatory. It's like an unwritten rule. You have to learn these languages to get along. Otherwise, you're gonna be ostracized it's gonna be a silent ostracization. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna get, you know, pretty much left behind. You know, so you had to learn all these languages as a kid, and the fact that I'm old now is quite embarrassing that I don't speak my native tongue, Kifuliru, but I speak Swahili, which is kind of like the lingua franca for tradesmen back in the day, and it became a lingua franca again in the early 80s because the presidents that would come in would be like, "Yo, we gotta make this the lingua franca because I'm actually from this tribe." So it was all favoritism in terms of,
Yeah,
oh, this is I'm the president, I speak Swahili, therefore Swahili should be this and that, that type
gotcha.
of vibe, So
So,
yeah,
we spoke a little bit about your experience in America. What about, I guess, like in South Africa, like your parents being from the Congo, like were they accepted? Were y'all in general accepted by the people,
yeah.
or if not, like what was like the experience?
Yeah, overall, we were accepted, and the first time my dad landed in South Africa, 'cause he landed first, and we were left in Mozambique. Um, we were trying to get a good life. You're trying to find refuge or whatever, because we ran away from war, and the amount of times that my parents actually escaped death, it's innumerable. It was a blessing. But we ended up in South Africa, and my dad was arrested, at the border. But then, luckily, the guy that arrested him was a Christian or whatnot, and my dad is a Christian too, and they asked him if he spoke English. My dad didn't speak a lick of English. He spoke French. So they brought in a French translator. Fast forward, my dad explained his life story to this gentleman, and they released him. And then they offered a ride to Durban from the border. And it called my parents over due to the help of this police officer. We had, you know, all of us were, pretty much brought in. And then we were accepted for the most part. And then over time, there was xenophobia because, some political leaders would rise up and, stir up the pot. And then, if they found you on the street speaking a different language from those of South African, um, the languages of South Africa, you'd get arrested or you'd get unalived sometimes, unfortunately. So we had to
So,
bounce.
real
Yeah.
real quick, so like I guess that xenophobia, did that come from just like any South African, or was it any particular group?
Yeah, majority of the time. So, by the way, Durban, where we lived for the most part, is a predominantly Zulu speaking Zulu people area, right? It's in a state called KwaZulu Natal, which is self-explanatory. It's on the east side of South Africa, and most those guys are known to be very patriotic, very pompous, very braggadocious, and for the most part, they are very welcoming. If you do not cause anything, nothing will happen. But then some get envious. If your business thrives, they'll start saying things like, "Oh, magahambe," which means he has to go, meaning he has to go back to his home country or whatever because he's successful and we don't have anything. Kind of like some of the statements you've heard about Mexicans in America.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's unfortunate, but then the ones it's all about who you run into. For the most part, it's the uneducated who will say stuff like that. The ones who are very loving, educated, and mature, they are very welcoming as long as you don't cause any problems. They are willing to have you chill with them. Live in peace. So for the most part, we were safe up until we were not. Some political leaders would rise and be like, oh, there's a selling of street pharmaceuticals. We have to get rid of these people. They're selling this and that on the streets, and our kids are dying. And stuff like that. And my dad would ask questions like, if we are selling the drogas, who are the customers? You can't blame us. And my dad never sold anything. He was just challenging um whatever statements that were made by these politicians. And we
Yeah.
had to run away from province to province for safety at certain times throughout our lives. out there, but for the most part, they are very good people, And then I think it all depends with who you run into. Like I said, generally, it's the uneducated, very people who are led by assumptions instead of getting to know you first. So they would, maybe they'll have a bad experience with one foreigner, and they'll generalize. They'll think every foreigner is like that. So that's the danger of assumptions.
Gotcha.
But for the most part, it's a very good country. The culture is very rich, very rich and very dense. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming up. You've got a very interesting story. I'd definitely like to have you come back again sometime because I have a ton of questions, and I think
Sure.
I think a lot of other people we're gonna find it interesting too. But yeah, thanks for coming up, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. Have a great one.
You too. All right. So let's get to our topics. Oh crap, which one is it? I think it's this one. There's our topics. John the Geezer says, yes, the conquistador. Okay, let me get to the chats real quick. 50 Gray Shed says, what are we talking about again? So that one, he was just a guy that swung by, and he briefly mentioned in the chat that he was from the Congo, raised in South Africa, and now living in the US. And he was like the only one here. And I was like, damn, that's super interesting. I want to get to know this guy a little bit more. And that was well worth it, because for those of you who missed it, he how do I say this? He did have an interaction with an FBA, let's say. Like a real world interaction with an FBA. I don't know if this person actually identified as an FBA, but this person told Congo Money, he was like, oh, I can tell you're not a DOS, which apparently means descendant of slaves. And I was like, what? That's crazy. Because, we always hear that, oh, this is online stuff. This stuff only happens online. Why are you so worried about this thing and that thing? It's only online. But Congo Money he actually experienced it in the real world. In his story, he was trying to play basketball with some people at the park, and they were all like, Black Americans. And then they started noticing some things about him, and then, the bigotry came out. But it's not just a thing online, apparently. I don't know how prevalent it is offline, but we'll see. But that was a really interesting part, and I really liked the talk about the Congo, because I know like zero about the Congo, and it seems really interesting to learn about a place from someone who's actually from there. And then he also lived in South Africa. It was just super interesting. Let's see, certified something says, what's the topic? You make good content. Thank you. I'll go over the topics here and then we'll get started. I can't stand FBAs. Yeah, man. Like I remember when I first started making content, I noticed that I think I mistakenly believed that there were some ways we could be like friends or allies with FBAs. But then I realized that a lot of them just kind of want to hate. They just want to hate other people. And even whenever I would try to like highlight some areas where we agree, they were like, no, you don't agree with me 100%, so you're the enemy kind of thing. And even whenever you're just trying to understand them, this was one of the weird things. Whenever I would just like ask a genuine question, like, hey, I don't know how y'all feel about X. Could you explain it? Merely asking questions would get them mad and then want to block you. So it's like, all right, okay, y'all people, y'all are something else, and y'all clearly don't want to, you clearly don't want to have any kind of alliances or even be friendly to other people. So it's like, why would I even bother with you? So I don't bother with FBAs anymore. Whatever. Congo Money says, shout out to all my mulatto brothers and sisters. Yes, you're welcome anytime, Congo Money. Okay, so topic list. First topic is going to be my adventures with the Opps. I went on a live stream, and actually Congo Money was on that live stream too, and I think that's how he said that's how he found me, with some of our Opps, and it was really interesting. So I'll kind of go over that. Next topic is going to be, do mulatos face anti-blackness? Anti-blackness in quotes. I have a whole belief about that. So I'd like to hear y'all's opinion too. Next topic would be black, white, or African European when it comes to defining mulatto. Like, what are the terms we're going to use? What are the best terms? And how do we go about defining these terms? And then lastly, Jay offended me. Jay triggered me. He said Europe was better than America. And he starts talking about all this BS, about like happiness and freaking quality of life. And I was like, no, bro, you don't know America like I do. So we're going to have a debate about which is better, Europe or America. I think Jay only knows about America from like TikTok videos and like news headlines, headlines from like Southside Chicago or like St. Louis, Baltimore. That's his view of America. He thinks like what happens in Baltimore and Detroit, all the crime in those places in Chicago, that's all of America, apparently. So that should be a very lively debate. Okay. So I can't remember the exact day. It was a few days ago. It wasn't that long ago. But I went on a live with Miss Nasty Jackson, I believe is her name, her handle. And she was on there with like her whole group. And some of y'all are like out there. So y'all probably know these people better than I do. But she was with like Creole Mulatress and Kentucky something, and Afro Latino guy, he was on there too. And so that's kind of like their group. And I was watching this live and I knew that they're at odds with us. Like over in our space, I don't know how to call it, our group, whatever, our two groups are kind of at odds. And I was listening to this live and I'm like wondering, wait, why is it that, these people, why is it that our two groups are so at odds with each other? They were saying a lot of things and I'm like, hey, I agree with that. And then they'd say another thing and I'm like, hey, I agree with that too. And I was like, what is going on? Why are we so opposed to each other? Why are we considered Opps? And do we have to be that way? So I ended up jumping up on the panel, and I think I was most likely probably allowed to join the panel because I had like commented on Miss Nasty Jackson's post, and it wasn't anything like, I wasn't attacking her or belittling her experiences or anything like that. I was just kind of like genuinely interested. So I think I guess she trusted me enough to like let me up on the panel, and she didn't think I was going to do some crazy stuff. So I go up on the panel, and overall it was, I think, a good experience. I don't know how productive it was, but it was a good experience, at least from my perspective. And again, we talked about some things, and there was agreement on a lot of things. Like I agreed with a lot of the things they were saying, and they actually agreed with some of the things I was saying. So one of the guys there was Afro Latino guy, and I don't know if y'all know who that is, but he's a Hispanic guy, and I think he's like majority like European ancestry with like a little bit of Native American ancestry and a little bit of African ancestry, yeah. And I've seen his videos. If you've seen his videos, he's very antagonistic against other Latinos. Yeah. Sometimes I agree with him. Sometimes I think he's in the right. Sometimes I think he's a little off on things. But surprisingly, he was very inquisitive. Let's say he's a pretendian. Mulato Premium says he's a pretendian. I'm not sure what he exactly says, but I know he claims like every little drop of non-European ancestry he has. But I expected him to be kind of like antagonistic or like attacking me or something. But he was most of the time he was quiet. And then the few times he spoke, he was inquisitive. He was like asking me questions to try to find out what I actually believe and what I think. So that I appreciate. And he also followed me afterward. So hopefully there's not going to be like any kind of animosity or anything in the future between us. So that was pretty surprising. Yeah. Let's see. We're at 1.6K likes. Let's get the likes up. Thank you, everybody. And can you also share the live in the group chats? I can't share them to group chats. I can only share them to individual people. Also, you can share them to individual people that you think might be interested in this. But yeah, share, tap the screen, get the likes up. So the other people on the panel were, I think, Creole Mulatresse, and she was probably the most antagonistic on the panel. It wasn't like super overt. She just kind of opposed my views on certain subjects, and then every now and then would make these kind of like passive aggressive comments that were, deliberate. They were a deliberate intent to try to kind of like poke the bear, trying to set me off, And luckily I'm used to dealing with people like this. I have a thick skin, so I'm not gonna like, fly off the handle for some snide little comments. But it was all, I don't know, I'd have to ask some of the other people that were there. But it almost seemed like she was being more contrarian. Like she like kind of agreed with me for the most part, but she would look for things to disagree with me on and then highlight that. Whereas I had the opposing strategy, which was highlight areas where we disagree, establish that as a foundation, and then we can start talking about the areas where we disagree. Did I say that right? Talk about the things that we agree on, and then from there, talk about the things we disagree on. That was my strategy going in. And for the most part, I think it worked. But I could tell she didn't really like me that much. Specifically talking about Creole Mulatresse. Kentucky joined in, and I've seen Kentucky on like other lives, and where she's like going at it hard with some of the other mulattos in our space, and she wasn't being like that with me, which I appreciate. And the only time I really heard her speak was when I mentioned some comment about us creating a community, and I was describing, certain things about creating a community, and I can't remember the exact things I was saying, but one of the only times that Kentucky spoke was when she said she agreed with me on that. And so I was like, oh, awesome, that's cool. We're getting somewhere. Thank you all for getting the likes up. I see we're at 3.4K. Awesome, thank you. Keep it going. So who else was there? So it was Miss Nasty's live. She was the host. And again, she was saying a lot of things, and I agreed with them. It was interesting. There was a lot of agreement. She's opposed to the one drop rule. I was surprised by that. And now maybe her justification for it is a little bit different than ours, but yeah. And she was also saying how one of the issues that she had with us in our space was that she was, I think she had joined like our space, and then she was like kicked out, and she says that she was like kicked out because they told her that she wasn't, quote, mixed enough. Okay. And for the record, I think she's, her dad is African American and her mom is Colombian, a mestiza. And I think she has her DNA test posted, and I can't remember the exact percentages, but to me, she's a mulata. Like, she has some Native American ancestry, but come on. She's probably like 80-something% mulata, and, you know, John DeGeezer says she's definitely a mulata. Yeah, she's a mulata. So I don't know if that was really the reason why she was kind of... Crap, hold on. Every now and then, TikTok makes me do some BS to verify I'm still like here doing a live. So I'm not sure if she was actually like kicked out of our space because she was not mixed enough. But I mean, it's possible. It's also possible it was ICE alarm. John DeGeezer says ICE alarm. Dude, probably, you know, verify you're legal. Here's a quick English language test. Who was the first president of the United States? That's what it was. But she could have been kicked out for some other reasons. Maybe she was doing something wrong, or I don't know. Or maybe she was, you know, not justifiably kicked out. But, you know, I can't know that. But you know, in general, she's kind of having an issue with not being accepted by really any kind of group, because I think she identifies as Afro-Indigenous, but she mentioned not being accepted by them either. John DeGeezer says, I invited her to come. Yeah, she's welcome to come. I don't mind them coming. But one of the things I noticed overall, because I was trying to find the differences between our two groups, like why are our two groups having conflict? And from my perspective, I whittled it down to two things. They are very concerned with anti-Blackness and like the struggles of the Black community. And two, they are very feminist, like very feminist. That was the impression I got. We only kind of, you know, scratched the surface of feminism. We didn't really talk about it that much in depth, but they brought up intersectional feminism and how that's like a very necessary thing to discuss in a mulatto community. There was I can't remember her real name, but Carmel Skin something. She was there too. And there was a moment where like Miss Nasty was talking, and then she stopped talking, and then I started to respond, and so did what's her name? Caramel Skin. She started responding too. And so there was a moment where we were both like talking at the same time, and I just kept going. And then she stopped, and then I was able to make my point. Okay? Typical stuff. This is typical stuff that happens when you're on a live and there's a lot of people and everybody's got something to say. Yeah? And then like whenever I stopped talking and then she started making her point, she did that kind of like, you know, kind of thing. Like I can't remember the exact words she said, but she was like something like, you interrupted me when I was talking and I don't appreciate that, you know? And I was in my head like, bro, like we both started talking at the same time, but I just didn't stop talking. You stopped talking, you know? So it's a free for all. But this, I think, is the that feminism coming out of them, you know, that woman is supreme. Man must bow before woman and stand up to men. Men are the problem. type of mentality. I don't know if she actually believes all those things. I'm just saying this is the impression that I got from her. Yeah. And so I don't know if those are the two things that are absolutely the reasons why our two groups are at odds. But those are two things I've noticed, and I even mentioned it to them. I was like, I'm starting to notice that y'all are very concerned with like anti-Blackness, and this is just something that I don't know. Maybe y'all have experienced this. Not anti-Blackness, but maybe y'all have like some concerns about it, and just it doesn't come up that much. But I've never once been like, man, you know what's really wrong? You know what's something we really need to talk about? It is anti-Blackness. I'm like, what? Let me read the chats real quick. Mulata Premium says, Mulato is a mindset. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Frontman44 says they're Black apologists. Yes, they're, like I said, they're very concerned with the Black community, the struggles of the Black community. And for whatever reason, I mean, I know why I'm not concerned with that stuff, but generally us over here, we're like, I'm concerned about anti-Blackness so insofar as it affects my family. Like if it affects my family, in the immediate, or I guess, yeah, even in, in general, then I'm concerned about it. But for them, it's like, crap, my mics. But for them, it's more about, I don't know. It's they have this mentality that all the burdens of the Black community fall on them, and I just don't have that mentality. Like, we're not Black, we're mulattos. We've got enough issues to freaking worry about, man. I'm not gonna take on the burdens of other communities, especially when they're not gonna do anything for us. John DeGeezer responds to Frontman44. Problem with that is you always have to appeal to them. Yeah. Mulata Premium, they are pro-Black, not pro-mulatto. Yeah, that's kind of like the thing I kind of noticed. Like they would, the majority of the conversation was about Black people and anti-Blackness and embracing your Blackness and colorism and stuff. And it's like, maybe like 5 minutes on like issues that specifically affect mulatos. And most of them there were mulatas, except for Afro-Latino guy, But I don't know. I don't get it. Johnny Geezer says, I love your thinking. Responding to Mulata Premium. Frontman44 responding to Johnny Geezer says, exactly, and they will try to make them Black as well. Let's see. John DeGeezer says, but when they say something wrong, they let them know they ain't Black. Yes, constantly. And I think they realize that, which is one of the areas where we agree, because they were all kind of embracing the mulatto identity. At least Creole Mulatres and Kentucky, like they embrace the mulatto identity. And I love that. I love that about them. Good, keep that up. But then why do you have to preface that with, well, I'm Black? Or like all this pro-Black stuff. Like, you know how goofy it would sound if I was like, oh, I'm mulatto, but I'm white. And do you know all these bad things that are happening to white people? Oh my God. Like, I would sound ridiculous. Like caring about this other group of people, man. Like, no. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna care about my people. My friends, my family, and my people. That's what it's about. Johnny Geezer, bro, most of them don't live in a Black community and are Black apologists. Yeah. I don't get that either. How are you going to be pro-Black but then not live around Black people? How are you going to be pro-Black but then like not have a Black boyfriend? Some of them do, but I think some of them don't. Yeah. John DeGeezer says, I grew up with Bantus and I'm not pro-Black. Yeah, John DeGeezer is a perfect example. He grew up around them. and he's not even that way. You know, for me, I did not grow up around them. You know, I have my black parents, but that was about it. Where I lived, there weren't that many Bantus, so I mean, it's, you know, I don't have that connection to them that like maybe they have, and nor do I desire a connection to them like that. Like I always say, I want good relations with everybody. I want allies, but I don't have like this like bond. I don't want it either. This connection with the black community, like. No, like they have their thing, they can do their thing, and then we have our thing, we're gonna do our thing. We can like, you know, shake hands and be diplomatic and whatnot, but you know, that's one of the things I've noticed that's another difference with them. They really want that close connection to the black community. And, you know, maybe it's because of some kind of racism they've experienced and they want to resist YT. I can understand that, but I don't agree with that response to it. You know, I think you don't respond to racism from white people by just going the complete opposite direction. You know, you don't let your actions and your beliefs be that influenced by somebody that hates you. You know, you think for yourself. You figure out, well, what's best for me, and then you take it from there. Sulan says it's Afrocentrism. Yeah. Like it's one thing to be interested in that. It's one thing to, you know, have actual connections to that community, because I know there's some mulatos that did grow up around, you know, black people. And so they have this connection, this tighter connection with them. But, you know, you're still different. You know, if I grew up around a bunch of white people, like, in my case, I did grow up around a bunch of white people, and I have a certain connection to them that, you know, some other mulatos are not going to have. But I've never been like, you know what, I need to like fight for white people. That's never been an option for me. It's never been a thought on my mind. Let's see. John DeGeezer says, trust me, I'm trying to make enough money and live in a white middle class community. Go ahead, Geezer. Yeah, isn't Jay trying to go to Spain? Dude, I wouldn't mind living in Spain. I mean, I kind of would mind it, but I mean, okay, I wouldn't mind having like a vacation home like in Spain, like in Galicia or somewhere off the Mediterranean, Catalonia. John DeKeyser says there's no mulatto community in America. Oh, no. Sulan said that. Yeah. That's what we're here to build. We're here to build a mulatto community. Okay. Thank you for all the likes, everybody. Let's keep it going. We're at 6.8K likes. All right. Moving on. I was hoping Jay would be here because I think Jay was in on that live, and he might have seen some things that I probably didn't, or observed some things, and I would have liked to have talk about some of those things with him. If anybody wants to come up, you're free to come up. This doesn't have to be a monologue. This doesn't have to be me preaching up here. I like interacting with y'all. Iberian says Andalusia, Spain. Yep. That's a good region. Yeah. Somewhere in the Mediterranean. Okay, so I think that was for the most part everything on topic number 1. So the next topic was do mulattoes face anti-Blackness? And this is kind of a tricky question depending on how you define anti-Blackness. And since I'm not someone who actually uses this term that much, I'm kind of going off of my own definition of anti-Blackness, trying to understand it based on its usage. But to begin with, my understanding of anti-Blackness is just any kind of hatred hatred, prejudice, discrimination against people who identify as black. Yeah. And so, or maybe you could refine it more, and maybe it's, any kind of hatred against the dark-skinned peoples of Africa and their descendants, something like that, or anything related to those peoples, whether it be, hair texture, skin color, culture, language, things like that. That's my interpretation of it. Again, I'm not the one trying to define it, nor am I the one that is obligated to define it. It's usually the person using the term is obligated to do it. But I've often heard that we mulattoes face anti-Blackness, and I'm like, something is off about that. Something is really off about that when they say we face anti-Blackness. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you're out and you meet somebody, and then they're a racist, okay? And they're like, I see your curly hair, or I see your big lips. I see something in you that just screams African, just screams black. And this person says that he doesn't particularly like African people and their descendants. He doesn't like black people, and therefore he doesn't like you. He hates you. So that would be an example of a mulatto experiencing anti-Blackness from their perspective. This is me trying to steelman their argument, the best argument that they can put forth, that mulattoes experience anti-Blackness, okay? So I imagine that's the best argument that they would put forward, that would be a case of a mulatto experiencing anti-Blackness. Okay. So it is true that there are people out there that hate black people, hate Africans and their descendants, yeah? And there are, of course, people who will hate us, mulattoes, because we have that African ancestry, because we have these African features, yeah? But when does a person or a group of people, let's remove the racial labels and say there's two groups, okay? When does hatred, when group two, let's say this is group two and this is group one, okay? When group two experiences some kind of hatred, why would you label that hatred with the name of group one? You get where I'm going with this? So somebody hates group one, group two is somewhat related to group one, therefore he hates both groups. But in a particular instance, this person is hating on group two, and that hatred is now going to be described with a label that references group one, but not group two. If group two is the one experiencing the racism. So to bring back the labels, group one is black people, group two is mulattoes, all right? If a mulatto is experiencing racism, why would you put a label that references black people if we are not black? Why is the racism we experienced considered, the same thing as the racism that black people experience? I can't think of another instance where you would do that, where you would say, like, you're X, but the racism you experience is really racism of Y. So I think we have to be honest and explain that, yes, it is our relationship to black people that will, in some cases, cause us to suffer racism. But this is a framing issue. And I do not like the framing that if we experience racism, it is anti-Blackness. Because, again, we are not black. So it doesn't make sense to put that label on it. To me, you would say, no, this is a racism, a type of hatred against mulattoes. Okay. Obviously there are going to be certain experiences that we have that are different from black people, from white people. And that includes racism, the type of racism that we're going to experience. Or if it's not overt racism, maybe some kind of discrimination, some kind of prejudice or whatever. Yes, mulata premium, anti-mulatto. Yeah, it's anti-mulatto. And we need to maintain that framing, because notice how whenever you label it anti-blackness, in that label, there's no implication that mulattos are also experiencing it. Just going off the label. Yeah, you could make the argument that it is inferred that anybody with, African ancestry is going to be included. But why is, if we have a group of people, let's say, quote, monoracial black people, and then everybody that has a mixture of African, whether they be like Blasians, mulattos, Sambaigos, I forgot what their, I can't remember the American name, but people like mixed with black and native, Douglas. Okay, all these people, they're all different groups of people, and they're all experiencing racism, but we only give it the label of black, this one group. Okay, I don't know how you can say that for everybody that hears the term, it is inherently implied that, yeah, it includes all these other groups, but you're not naming all the other groups. So if a Dougla experiences racism, that would be anti-Dougla. If you're discriminating against a Dougla person, why would you call that anti-blackness? The person is not black, the person is Dougla. Call it anti-Dougla. Okay? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that word right. It looks like Dougla. Someone who's half Asian Indian and half black. So if we are going to be mulattos, we don't need to be adopting this term anti-blackness to describe the racism that we experience. Okay? I also don't see the need to kind of like divide the racism, I guess. Maybe you could make a case that it's necessary. There are going to be people who don't like us because we do have European ancestry. So that may be a different kind of racism. I guess you can make a case for it, but I prefer to just put it all together as being anti-mulatto, not anti-blackness. Okay? Yes, John de Geezer, anti-mulatto does exist. There are people who specifically do not like us. Let me read the chats. Kev Ben says also tribalism. Yeah. John de Geezer says, tu és muito anti-macaco. muito anti-macaco. Oh, man. Iberian says, silêncio, Jorge. Fica calado. Tens papéis. That's the first time I've seen that in Portuguese. Tens papéis. Você tem papéis. Johnny Geezer says anti-mulatto does exist. Hey, Mulato Genesis, good to see ya. You say, can't wait till we have one so we can get away from the monoracials. Yeah, they don't want us around. They really don't. They view us as a nuisance. They view us as outsiders, infiltrators, objects to be used. There's no place for us with them. Johnny Geezer says, in some parts of Africa, mulattos were getting deleted. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. 50 Gray Shades, our community isn't in inverse to black community. That's why when people say pro mulatto, I just find it funny. The mulatto itself is understood to be pro mulatto. Yeah, that's a good take. That's a good take. Yeah. Unfortunately, there are some people who want to identify as mulatto but be pro something else, or a more charitable interpretation, they are equally concerned with some other group of people. And I think we can't we can't have our identity and have our community and try to build something while also having to take on the burdens of all these other groups, blacks and whites. Like, that's not our burden. You know, it's only our burden insofar as it affects our family. You know, obviously we're not going to sit around and let, you know, our family members experience any kind of racism like that. But, you know, as far as that goes, that's not really like our problem. You know, we don't have a community. They have a community. Okay. That needs to be our focus, not like, oh, what are the disadvantages that black people are facing? Like, no, I was going to say they're already way ahead of us. I don't know if I can say that, but in regard to a community, they at least have a community. Granted, in most parts of America, it's pretty dysfunctional and not something you would want to emulate, but they have the community. You know, they have the clay and it's well within their power to shape it into something better. But that's not our responsibility. We don't have the clay yet. We're trying to get the clay so that we can then build something, you know? But I get what you're talking about, 50 Gray Shades. And about, you know, saying pro mulatto, yeah. Mulato Premium says a lot of mulattos are Blackistan. Yeah, they're still in Blackistan. And it's funny because some of them they didn't even grow up around black people. Like, they don't even have like that kind of tight connection with black people, but they want it so bad. I don't get it. Mulatto Genesis says, no, because there's people who claim mulatto but say they are pro-black. Oh yeah. That's pretty much what I was saying. I mean, I don't mind saying, you know, pro mulatto. I think, you know, maybe it has its uses. Same with like this may be just my hang up. I don't really like the word pride that much. Like, I made a video talking about this attack against us, that we have like colonizer blood and that we should be ashamed of that part of our ancestry. And throughout the whole video, I never used the word pride. I used the word not ashamed or unashamed. I prefer that language use a lot better than, you know, saying I'm proud to be this, proud of this, you know, because I think the word pride, at least in the English language, it has too many different meanings and it can be understood differently. I just like to say I'm unashamed, you know? And it's funny because in that same video, people were claiming that I said that I was proud to have colonizer blood. Like, I had never said that in the video. I don't believe that either. I'm just not ashamed of it. You know, I can go on a long rant about why I'm not ashamed of it, but, you know, I think y'all get the point. John de Geezer says, yep, in Angola during the colonial war and civil war. Man, John de Geezer, at some point, we need to have like a live where we talk about Angola, because that's a very interesting place. Let's see, Mulatto Genesis, they are overcompensating. Yeah, definitely. I don't know. You know, we can speculate all day for why they would want to be part of the black community. You know, I think another reason could be they actually do really want a community, a place where they can feel like they belong. And because there's no mulatto community, they're like, the next closest thing is the black community. Let me just try to, you know, join them. But no matter how much you freaking like bow before them, how much you kiss their feet, you know, there's always going to be some segment of the black community that is going to dislike you, that is going to wonder, why are you here? Leave now. Okay, there's always going to be those people. 50 Gray Shade says, nah, we can create our own phrases and sayings, lol. Yeah, I agree. Mulatto Genesis, yeah, I'm not ashamed doesn't mean I'm proud of them or what happened. Yeah, you know, this is more of a philosophical discussion maybe, but, you know, whenever you look back on colonialism, imperialism too in general, like in that video I said I was opposed to it. Like, I genuinely am opposed to those things. But I'm glad that they happened, because otherwise I would not exist. Almost none of us would exist without it. And that's just a fact that we have to accept, that unfortunately a lot of atrocities were committed, a lot of lives were destroyed, but without it we wouldn't have existed. And I like existing. I'm not going to be one of these people that like hates existence and wishes he was never born. Like, no, existence is preferable. Existence is pretty good. So I will continue to oppose colonization and all that, but still be glad that it happened. 50 Gray Shade says we shouldn't want to be casted or reminded in the light of a monoracial group, we're mulatos. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Definitely not. Let's see, that Mulatto Be Wild. Hey, what's up? Welcome. The Bantu sympathizer. John DeGizer says, I feel like if they really grew up in a black community in the hood, they wouldn't be pro-black. Yeah, that's, I've heard the stories about stories from different mulatos who grew up around black people. And those aren't some nice stories, Some of the things you have to grow up, And the funny thing is I grew up around freaking like white people, like rednecks, man. I didn't have those kinds of like experiences. I wasn't like having to freaking like get into fights and like prove my toughness or anything like that. Like, I don't know. I also, even from like a young age, wasn't trying to like fit into other groups. Like if I wasn't accepted by a group, I just moved on. Like, most of my friend choices were based on like, similar interests, people who didn't have any kind of racial hangups. And so I had like a freaking United Nations of friends, like different races, people from different countries and stuff like that. Like oh shit. Like the whole belonging thing, I don't know, that wasn't a thing for me. That Mulatto Be Wild says, aren't you in England? I feel like that's worse than the hood, responding to John DeGeezer. I don't know. I've heard there are some like, some hoods in London. A lot of knife stabbings and fork stabbings. Che says South America belongs to us. That Mulatto Be Wild says, I don't know. United States mulattos are built different. We are them mulatos. 50 Gray Shade says, most of us are from the suburbs. Didn't deal with that. Yeah, I guess I kind of grew up in the city for like half my childhood, and then we moved to the suburbs. But even when I was like living in the city, like I had like a suburb mentality, but also just didn't really grow up around a bunch of Bantus or anything. Mulatto Genesis says, I'm not begging for acceptance from no one. Yeah, we shouldn't have to do that. The problem is we're kind of like spread out all over the country, and it's even whenever you find like other mulatos like in a similar space, IRL, like in the same city or same like school or something, there will be black people that will try to prevent any kind of like, mulatto unity. They don't want that. And so that's when they come at you with the whole brother and sister thing. They can't have it. John DeGeezer, you like being racist to that African woman for no reason. Responding to that Mulatto Be Wild. That Mulatto Be Wild says, we don't have nationalism and misogyny like a lot of other mulatos. Okay, I think you're talking about something different. Che, so what country should we take? We need one. Should we take? Who said anything about taking a country? I don't think we need a country either. But But you do bring up a point about like numbers, like whatever our numbers are in America, I think we have them. Like I don't think numbers is a thing. It's how do we get people to realize their true identity. And unfortunately, like I said, the path of least resistance is just identifying as Black, accepting whatever label society throws on you, and then trying your hardest and hoping that Black people will accept you. And most people are going to take that path of least resistance. Those of us here that identify as mulatto and are trying to do something about it, we're a rare breed. We're people who are trying to swim upstream. And unfortunately, a lot of people, regardless of race, just don't want to do that. Like they want to be able to focus on like other things that they like and not have to worry about race so much. They want to be able to like, play their video games or watch sports or something. Whatever their hobbies are, and not have to worry about race. So if that's your mentality, you don't want to worry about race, then and you're a mulatto, what you're gonna do is be like, yep, I'm Black. That's what it is. And then just, do whatever you have to be accepted or whatever. There's also, I think, there's a kind of, I don't know what you would call them, a group of mulattos who also are similar to us that like from the suburbs, they maybe didn't grow up around a lot of Black people, but they still identify as Black, and they have like zero intentions of, I don't know, be like fighting for Black people or doing anything. They just want to live their life. But because it's just easier, it simplifies everything if you just identify as Black. There's no having to correct people about anything. If they notice you're mixed, you just say, oh yeah, I'm mixed with blah, blah, blah. And then they can move on and then never have to have that discussion anymore, But, the question is, how do you get people to start swimming upstream? How do you get them to realize that, they're not realizing their true identity? Or I guess what we believe to be their true identity. And unfortunately, I think it's pain. I think if people experience enough pain, then they'll start to kind of realize, I guess, their true identity. And then the path of least resistance becomes identifying as mulatto. It no longer becomes identifying as Black. Because like I said, I've heard some horror stories from y'all's experiences, like being around Black people. And, for y'all, I think identifying as mulatto becomes the path of least resistance. For me, it would have been just identifying as Black and being done with it. But I don't know, maybe I'm weird that way. All right, let's keep it moving. Okay, John DeGeezer and that mulatto be wild are going at it in the comments. Che says Brazil, Puerto Rico is pretty mulatto. I'd say maybe Venezuela as well. Jay is from Venezuela, and he says it's I think he says it's mostly well, I don't know what he means when he says mestizo, because mestizo has many different meanings in different parts of the world. But I think for the most part, Venezuela is like probably triracial and mulatto. But they do have a lot of like, actual mestizos who are like with European and indigenous, or people who are, mostly European or mostly African. Puerto Rico, I'm not sure what the mulatto population would be, but hey, Puerto Rico sounds pretty good. It's American, so you don't really need a passport to go there. But realistically, I don't know, because obviously they speak Spanish there, If we were to build a community there, how many people would be willing to do that? It's a pretty attractive place. It's in the Caribbean, but yeah, it's on the table, I would say. 50 Gray Shades says, great points. Che says, okay, what do you think of a mulatto being with a white person basically creates a white kid, lol? I mean, they would create a quadroon, you know. Me and, who was it? I think it was probably me and Jay and someone else. We were talking about how we need to do like, we need to have the talk about mulatto dating. And it's another one of those uncomfortable conversations that a lot of people probably don't want to have, but eventually is going to have to be had, you know, because, you know, at least my main goal here is to discuss building a community. And obviously that requires families and that requires men and women getting together. Know what I mean? So we're definitely going to have some talk about that, about, you know, finding a mulatto partner and then alternatives. I'll put it that way. Mulatto Genesis says, we def should run the monoracials out if the US besides native people. I don't understand that. A family member of mine has a quadroon kid, is white, can't see any black in them. You know, that's possible. It's possible that the kid got a lot of the European genes from the mulatto parents and very little of the African. But I don't know. You know, the phenotype is, it's not even really phenotype. It's physical appearance is so, I don't know. It's super subjective. Like, some people seem to be really good at identifying, you know, certain physical traits in people and associating them with certain groups. I think I'm horrible at that. For some reason, when I look at certain people's physical appearance, what I see is like different from what other people see, you know? So, you know, you say that, you don't see any black in them, but I mean, someone else might say, hey, look at this part, or look at this little like dent in the cheekbone. See, that's a black thing. Like, you know, I wouldn't know. Okay. Let's move on to the next topic. So it's going to be the use of black whitey versus the use of African and European to, I guess, define or talk about mulattoes, because I think African European is a lot better than saying black and white, but the problem is it's so much more convenient to just say black or white, or black and white. But the problem comes when people just interpret terms like black and white so differently from each other. And a lot of people like to make it seem it's a lot simpler than it really is. I don't think it is. I guarantee you could, like, you know, pull 1,000 black people and ask them, you know, what their identity is, and they're going to have a whole bunch of different ideas of what it is and what it entails. You know, because I think terms like black and white come with certain obligations, which is why they're very politically charged. And one of the things we have to take into consideration is that the words we use to define ourselves, we have to define those terms. So let's say we use African and European. We are now obligated to define those things. Yeah? And African and European aren't terms that are super easy to define. Like, it may seem that way, but I don't think it is. You can talk about, you know, geography and and like borders for countries and stuff like that. But humans aren't known historically to stay within certain borders and then never move again. Like humans migrate. And so you're going to have certain people that are, historically from Europe, but then now they're living in like Asia or something, or certain parts of the world may have been considered Europe in the past, but now they're no longer. Same with Africa, And so I think it's going to be significantly easier for us to define terms like African and European than it is going to like black and white, because there's so much negativity with the terms like black and white. And Jay was making the point, I think he's very pro using the words black and white. And his justification, so his argument was that we are qualified to define those terms. Like we're basically qualified to define the black identity. We're qualified to define the white identity as well. And I'm not sure I agree with that, because if the argument is that because we as mulattoes are defined as black and white, we therefore have a justification to define those terms, the same can be said about griffs and quadroons. They would be justified in defining the mulatto identity because they have a mulatto parents. Yeah, they are part mulatto, if you want to put it that way. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure how I feel about the idea of like griffs and quadroons being able to define our identity. Now, obviously, we live in a free society and, they're free to define that word however they want, and that doesn't necessarily affect us. It doesn't have to affect us. And if they define it one way, but we, the actual mulattoes, define it differently, then, I would say our definition takes precedence, and we can just disregard whatever they say. Okay, mulatto genesis, you say, nope, they can define griff and quadroon, but not mulatto. Okay, using that logic, we have no rights to define black and white then. That's the logic that you're giving me. And of course we're going to do that. Of course we're going to have our own definition of like black and white or African and European. But you could go another route. I'm kind of thinking out loud here. You could go another route, and you could also just not use any terms. Me and Jay briefly were arguing about this, and in the argument, I was like, let's remove the labels. And this was just like a thought experiment that I was conducting. Let's remove the labels, black, white, African, European, remove them all. Mulatto is two components, component 1 and component 2. And then how would you define those two components, Because there's one of the things you have to realize with like language is there's a difference between the label and then what that label represents. And I really would like to kind of really flesh out that thought experiment of just removing the labels and saying mulatto is component 1, component 2, and then what is component 1? How are we defining component 1? What are the boundaries? Where are the gray areas, Mulato Genesis says, that's like me being part white and black, so I can define that for the monoracials. Yeah, but I mean, do you think that's okay? I think practically speaking, we're going to define ourselves and then the components that make up what we are. So in this case, black, white, African, European. And then it has nothing to do with the actual, black and white people. They can define themselves however they want, but for our purposes, for our identity, we would have to have our own definitions of it. And then griffs and quadroons, they are part mulatto, so they they're going to have their own definition of what it is. And they can defer to us, or they can just come up with their own. And I think that's just the reality of it. And whatever conclusion they come to on what is a mulatto, that doesn't affect us. Okay, let me read some chats. Che says, it depends on the mix person. Let's say because some mixed people lean more white than black in terms of DNA. Neymar is a lot of Brazil is mulatto. Okay, yeah, you're right. Because DNA is not something you can predict all the time, and inheritance is largely random. So just because, you know, someone has a mom that's a mulatto and let's say a dad that's white, you can't predict what the mulatto mom is going to pass down to the kid. We all assume it's going to be, an equal amount of the African and an equal amount of the European, but that doesn't always happen. That's the most likely scenario, but it doesn't always happen. So you can have that same parental configuration and the child come out like 70-30 or 80-20. You know, most likely is going to be 75-25, but it's random. So you just don't know. Mulato Genesis says, I'm one of those that lean more European in DNA, 62% Euro and 37% Sub-Saharan African, 1% Southeast Asian. Yeah. Che, same. I'm like 65% Euro, 35% AF. Oh, African, not as fuck. Okay. Duty says, the world has to deal with and or unpack anti-blackness. Black people do. That's not an obligation of the world. Mulato Genesis says, nope, they can define Griff and Quadroon, but not mulatto. Okay, I already read that one. Duty says, what's the cutoff line for black? Yeah, that's a good question. Black people would have to decide that. We have this discussion all the time, and I think we're going to have it in the future. What's the cutoff for mulatto? Where's the line? At what percentage how do I put this, man? At what percentage are you a thing? So we all agree, someone that's 95% a thing, you're kind of that thing. You're that thing, yeah? Okay, if someone is 95% mulatto, you're mulatto, okay? I think 90% we're like, yeah. But what about 85%? What about 80? What about 75? If you're 75% a thing, does that make you that thing? Okay? So I've heard people say that quadroons are basically just white people. Griffs are basically just black people. But if you analyze that logic, you're saying being 75% a thing makes you that thing. So that would apply to mulatto as well. If you're 75% mulatto, that makes you mulatto. But is that what you mean to say? Do we all agree on that? We're not all going to agree on the definition of mulatto, but we just need to have like a rough idea that's not too far off and mostly compatible. But yeah, that's going to be a good question to ask. At what percentage are you a thing? And I will bring up the the Jays. The Ashkenazis. That's been something that's been happening because you look at any genetic studies and they can range from 35% European on average to 72% European on average. And a lot of people say that the Jays are white. So best case scenario, You meet an Ashkenazi J and he's 72% European. And you're like, yep, that's white. But realize what you're doing. You're now saying being 72% a thing makes you that thing. This is one of the things we have to think about. Whenever we start declaring people things, we have to understand the implications and the underlying logic we're using there. Let me get back to comments. Mulato Genesis says, that's like me being part YT and BLK, so I can define that for the monoracials. But they aren't mulatto though, so they don't really get a choice to define it. Well then, like I said, but then you don't get a choice in defining black or white. Because you're neither, yeah? But obviously we're going to do that. We obviously all have our own definition of what is black and white. And it differs from the definition that black people are using. You know, most of them are using the one drop rule. We don't buy that BS. So we've effectively already developed our own definition of what is black, and it contrasts with actual black Americans' definition of their own identity. So we do believe, in practice at least, that we have the authority to define the black and white identities. So by that logic, we believe we have the authority to define the black and white identities because we are a mixture of those two things. Likewise, using that logic, griffs and quadroons are equally justified in defining the mulatto identity because they are half that thing. They are part of that thing. But like I said, we don't have to acknowledge their definition. We don't have to respect it at all. But I would say, language is anarchy. There's no central agency that defines terms. I know dictionaries exist, but I mean, who the hell says that they're like an actual authority? It's literally just a group of people getting together, deciding what these words mean, But language, is anarchy. There's no central authority. Most of the time, what happens in the real world gets put in dictionaries, not the other way around. It's not dictionaries say a term means this, and then the rest of us adopt it. No, it's usually we in the real world use terms and apply certain meaning to them, and then dictionaries respond. So because language is anarchy, it's a free-for-all. Everybody can define words however they want, but no one is under any obligation to acknowledge or respect any particular definition from any particular person. That's the way I see it. It's a very philosophical thing, though. Duty says a quadroon can look biracial. I have some issue with the word biracial, but that's a different topic. 50 Gray Shed says 45-55 cutoff lol. Yeah, you say 45-55. Other people say 50-60. Jay says Griffin quadroons are the cutoff. Nothing past that. So 75-25 or something like that would be his cutoff. I think it's somewhere like in the 60s, I would say. I don't know. I don't have a specific DNA percentage in mind. I think Gold National said his cutoff is in the 60s, so I guess up to like 69%. Like I said, we're not all going to agree on the definition or the cutoffs or anything. These are all subjective terms. There's no objective cutoff. But as long as we have a working definition that's functional and is compatible, then I think we're good. Mulato Genesis says, if race is just a social construct, technically you could call yourself whatever if race is just fake. Yes, and they don't want to admit that. Like the people that talk about race as a social construct, they say that, but in practice, what do? In practice, they treat it as a biological reality. Okay? Because when something is a biological reality, you can't just change it. Like I'm of the species sapiens. I can't change my species. No matter how much I may want to be a falcon, I can't just say I'm a falcon and then it is so. That's a biological reality. But notice how that's exactly how they treat race. They say it's a social construct, like gender, and you can change your gender. You can be whatever you want. You can use whatever label you want. And it can be fluid. You can be a different gender and alternating days. Maybe in fall you're one gender, maybe in spring you're one gender. Because it's a social construct. But when it comes to race, no, you can't do that. You can't be racially fluid. You can't change your race. You know, your race is assigned to you at birth. You have to stay that way. And it's a glaring contradiction in their logic. Because like I've said in countless videos, they are authoritarians that want to control your racial identity. Because they're saying it's a social construct, therefore you can't change it. But in reality, it's them who doesn't want you to change it. Because it's politically advantageous for the races to be static. Okay, a lot of people would lose a lot of power in America if races were actually fluid, if races were actually treated as social constructs. But we all know the reality is that it is actually biological. It is an immutable characteristic. And that's how they want to treat it, but they want to dictate to you your identity. Mulato Genesis says, what about Black Americans with admixture? So I guess when you say admixture, you're talking about a small amount of admixture. Yeah, I don't know. What do you do with that? Because most Black Americans have a small amount of European admixture. I was surprised that my Black parents also did. My European ancestry is mostly like European. It's mostly Spanish and Portuguese and maybe like 1% French now. They keep updating these things. But I do have like 6% from the British Isles. I was like, what? And it came from my Black parent. I was like, damn. But as far as like, how do you refer to them? What do you call them? It depends. It would depend on, the amount of admixture that they have, I think single digits, it's like, that's negligible. You don't know exactly where that, European DNA is manifesting itself in your body. So, who knows? I think when it manifests itself in your external physical appearance, that's when we start to care about it a little more. But it's entirely possible that someone has like, let's say 9% European DNA, but all that DNA went to like, their internal organs or something. It determined their liver size. It determined the flow of the blood in their heart vessels or something, something that we can't observe externally. So yeah. Duty says, does Obama give black? If you had to say, does he give black? Like, do you mean, does he look black? Like, no, he looks like what he is. He's a mulatto, but he identifies as black. So he can, they can have him. I don't care. Mulato Genesis says he looks mulatto to me. Yeah. Your logic is sound. Yeah. We really got to think about like these things. Alpacas says it all depends on which genes you inherit from each parent. Yeah, exactly. You never know which genes you're going to inherit from your parent, and you don't know where they're going to go. Sometimes you're going to get genes. Some of them will go to your external physical appearance, your hair, your eyes, your face. all these things, but sometimes they're just not going to go to those places. Okay. Judy says fake with real world implications. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's all about power. It's about power with these people. Let's see. Mulato Genesis says, I'm mulatto and mulatos have range of phenotypes. Yeah, there's a wide range of like physical appearances, and I was talking about starting to do some content that kind of highlights those different physical appearances, because we've got people mixed with all kinds of things. Like for the most part, most of us are mixed with like West and Central African, and it's just a random assortment of whatever those African tribes were. But I think the part that kind of gets highlighted because we kind of can trace the ancestry a little better is the European side, and some of us are descendant from Southern Europeans, some from like Northern Europeans, Western Europeans, like from the British Isles and stuff like that. And so kind of highlighting that is a good thing. It would be hard to figure out, hey, I have this picture of someone, but I don't know their exact mix, what they're mixed with. But I think just showing different types of mulatos is very key. Because like one of the things that I've noticed a long time ago when I was like really studying Portuguese, I was consuming a lot of Brazilian content. And I'm to the point now where I can look at someone and know if they're a Brazilian mulatto or not. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that Portuguese ancestry, but I can look at someone and be like, okay, you're a very Brazilian looking mulatto. Or maybe it's the Angolan. I don't know. John de Geezer, you tell me. Pretty Gray Shade says, stop asking about Black Americans with admixture. Judy, hi, admixture is still mixed. Okay, so if we're going to keep talking about the word admixture, I'm going to have to set the record straight. So I don't know how many of y'all were at my... Actually, I don't think many of y'all were at my last stream towards the end when we were talking about Greeks. But the word admixture does not mean a small amount of mixture. Okay, admixture means any amount of mixture. So when you read like a scientific paper, specifically in like population genetics, they will use the word admixture to refer to any amount of mixture. So if someone is 50-50, they would call that an admixed individual. And they would say this person is admixed with European, admixed with African. So there's this kind of like internet understanding of admixture that is not correct. So we need to make sure we're using the terms correctly. Admixture is any amount. So when you say a high amount of admixture, I interpret that as like 30, 40, 50%, even going up to like 60%, because that's still admixture. But I'm guessing you mean like probably like in the teens or something, I don't know, or high single digits. So I'm not sure what you mean, Duty. But as far as defining like who's mixed and who's not, I honestly don't really care that much about the word mixed, because that's not my specific identity. So for me, any quantity is mixed. I just don't care. I've already, in genetics, they've established that everybody is mixed. Like they use the word admixed, but like I said, mixed and admixed mean the same thing. But everybody has ancestry, has DNA from some other group of people, whether they're existing or no longer existing, like an ancient group of people. The races that we have today are not the same ones that have existed throughout all of human history. there were previous races that existed that no longer exist because they mixed with some other group and created a lot of the modern day people we see today. Alpaca says, that's my point. It all depends on which genes you inherit from each parent. Yeah. Not percentage. Mulato Genesis, I got a lot of European from my African American dad, surprisingly. Yeah. I had fucking Sweden, England, Irish, and Scottish, Greek, and Luzon. That's freaking Philippines. From him, I was like, what the fuck? Yeah, I think, I don't know how to pronounce it. Luzon, that's from the Philippines. Mulato Genesis, you have to when they won't shut the F up. Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you for the follow, Caribbean. I appreciate it. Alpaca says Obama is biracial. 50 Gray Shade says Duty, what's considered high admixture? 30%, you're not mulatto. Yeah, that was my question. Betty says some look Spanish. I guess you mean some mulattos look Spanish. Yeah, typically the ones that have Spanish ancestry. Mulatto Genesis, because we come from so many ethnic groups. Yeah, exactly. And so also that European side is for a lot of us like mixed. It's not just one European group, you know. For me, it's mostly, you know, Iberian Peninsula. Iberian says, I can tell too, you look like you are green card mulatto. Hey, vato, don't be talking to me like that. I got my papers, man. 50 Great Shade says, Bianca Gama, oh wait, that's a Portuguese name. Bianca Gama de Araújo is a Brazilian mulatto. I've heard that name. Okay, I'm gonna look her up. Bianca Gama de Araújo. Let's look at her. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think also, who's that big Brazilian singer, Vanessa da Mata, I think she's a mulata. She might be more, I can't remember. I remember hearing her specific makeup, and I think she was leaning more towards the European side, but she looks very mulata. And she's quintessential Brazilian mulata. Like that's what like so many of them look like. I'm gonna put her up on the screen. Okay, so I'll turn the text off. Move the link up. There we go. Vanessa da Mata. Ah, coño. Get it straightened up. Okay. Yeah, she's super Brazilian. Let's say Mulatto Genesis. Yes, he's specifically mulatto. 50 Gracious, 30% or less Afro or Euro blood is not mulatto. History rhymes, not repeat. We can't take some elements. 30% or less. African is not, Afro or Euro blood is not. Yeah, 30% is, you're getting kind of low on both of those, but I don't know. I think Jay has a stream planned sometime next year, like early next year, like January or February. Oh, is that you, Jay? I think you just got in. And we're supposed to have this this discussion about like what is a mulatto and what are the boundaries and who's considered mulatto and who's considered white and who's considered black, African, European, and stuff. I hope, Jay, I hope you're able to bring all the content creators and everybody in, because I did it already. And I feel like we learned a lot. I was able to bring in Mulatto Vanguard, Mulatto Mindset. I think most of the people here were also there. Actually, maybe not. I don't know. But it was very productive. We were looking into it. We were talking about it, getting like deep in the weeds. And I know some people don't like getting deep in the weeds on this stuff, but you know, one of the things I don't want us to be is like a lot of these other people, a lot of these Black identified and white tea people, they get so freaking mad, man, when you ask the simple question, what is Black? Or when you ask them like, what is white? Or who is white? They get so bothered, so triggered by that simple question. It confounds me. Like, you don't want to define your own identity. Like, I don't want us to be like that. Whenever someone asks us, like, what is a mulatto? I want us to view that as an opportunity. A chance to grab the freaking microphone and say, hey, this is what we are, you know? And my strategy has been largely to give a more simplified definition of the word of the mulatto identity, and then be open to follow-up questions, because that's another thing that people get super pissed about. They get triggered when you ask the question, what is Black, what is white? And then if they give you a response and you have a follow-up question, it's like, how dare you? They get so triggered. It's like, I'm asking you about your identity. I'm trying to understand like you, and you're gonna get freaking mad. Like there was this one of these pro white tea guys. I won't say his name because it might trigger stuff on TikTok, but he's one of these like really older ones. And he was in an interview and the guy asked him like, so who is white tea? You know, like what peoples would be included in that definition? And he didn't like emotionally get upset, like, you know, like visibly, like, you know, shouting or anything, but you could tell just in his word choices and how he was speaking that he was upset. And he didn't answer the question because he just deflected and said, well, Black people don't have to answer that question. Nobody asks, what is a Black person? And I was like, dude, like, why are you running from that question? Why are you running from a chance to tell the world what you are and who your people are? You know, if I go to some freaking like, I don't know, like tribe in the Amazon and I ask them, you know, what they are, you know, they tell me I'm like, okay, I'll use a real world example, the Piraha. The Piraha are a people from the Amazon in Brazil. Fascinating people. After this stream, I suggest everybody look up the Piraha. It's literally spelled like piranha, but it's Piraha. And oh man, their culture, their everything is so interesting. I could do a whole freaking live talking about them. But it's like if I went to them and they're like, hello there, outsider. We are the Piraha. And then I'm like, oh, what's a Piraha? And then they like start attacking me with spears or something. That would be ridiculous. Like they're not going to do that. What they're going to do is they're going to be like, oh, well, Piraha is X, Y, and Z. They're not going to get freaking mad. Okay, let me get to chats. I've been neglecting chats. Let's see. John de Gizer says, damn Brazilian bonita. Ah, isso, muito bonita. Gostosa, né? She sings good too. But unfortunately, I think she's Black identified. Mulatto Genesis says she's a beautiful mulatta woman. Yeah, unfortunately, like, man, like Brazil is just importing all the worst aspects of American culture. I don't like it. And I freaking love Brazil, man. You know, there was a moment in my life where I wasn't going to school. I didn't have a job or anything. I was just being a bum. And I was like, yo, I got to do something productive, you know? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to learn a language. And I chose Portuguese just because I was like, I don't know shit about Portuguese. What the hell is Portuguese? And then I started learning it and I'm like, dude, this is so awesome. Cause like, I don't know, like Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese specifically. I know John de Geezer speaks, I guess Angolan Portuguese, which is different, but I was like, I fell in love with Portuguese. And, so I started learning a lot about Brazil and I'm like, man, Brazil is so awesome. They got people like me there too. And I don't know when it started happening. Maybe within the past like 10, 20 years or so. I don't know. But now they're starting to import this one drop rule shit. And it's so disheartening to see Brazilians do that. Now there are Brazilians fighting back against that, the whole one drop rule thing, but it's like, I think it's already law. Like they've already established that all pardos, like mixed race people, are black. Someone might correct me if y'all know Brazilian politics, but I think in Brazil, they have on the books, it is law now that all mixed people are black and they have the one drop rule. So yeah, that's that. John Geezer says the king of Mulatos in the room. He's not speaking. Okay, Jay, I see you requesting. Let me get through the comments real quick, and then I'll bring you up. Mulato Genesis, if he's king, he needs to lead us to victory over the monoracials, YT, and black fatigue. Hey, Jay, you do a lot of you're really good with AI. Do an AI of yourself in like freaking like war paint, carrying like a sword. Oh, dude, you gotta do yourself in like the conquistador outfit with like the conquistador helmet and the armor on a freaking horse, and then leading mulatos to victory. I want to see that. Okay, let's see. Jay responding to 50 Gray Shades. 30% Euro is mulatto and Afro blood is mulatto. Yeah, I told y'all Jay has a different view of this. Mulato Genesis says, we need to come to a consensus, bro, because it's making people confused. There will not be a consensus. I'm telling you now, there will not be a consensus. And do not look for one. What we need is just to have a general view. Let me take Vanessa La Mata off the screen. Okay. All we need to do is have a rough idea that is compatible. You know, it's not compatible if someone says, yeah, 95% European is mulatto, and then everybody else is saying like, you know, 50s, 60s. That's incompatible. We just need to have something that's compatible, you know? So there will not be a consensus. Where am I in the chats? 50 Gray Shade says 30% skews a bit low. The rule was 60-40, but I thought I was being strict with 55-45. Yeah, the problem with 55-45 and even 60-40 is, like I said, genetics is random. You can literally have two parents that are 50-50 and then their kid comes out 55-45, or two parents who are 55-45 and their kid comes out 60-40, or two parents that are 60-40 and their kids come out 65-35. So, you know, that's something that has to be taken into consideration. Jay says, why do you mean nationalism and misogyny? We aren't either. Yeah, I don't know what, I think that's Jaylon's account. I don't know what he was talking about, man. Mulato Genesis says, yeah, 55-45 is extremely strict, bro. Yeah, because then what do you call someone that's 60-40? you know, 75-25, that range is Griff. So then what would these other percentages be, you know? Johnny Geezer says, facts, it was never like this. Brazilians back in the days never said they were black. Yeah, I know, right? And I freaking love that about Brazil. But freaking, I don't know. Mulato Genesis says, American mulattoes can have 60% Euro easily, so it would be excluding a lot of us. Yeah. Yeah, that's why we need to have these conversations. Iberian says, when did this happen? Mulatto, Jay says, I'm reading the comments. 50 Gray Shade says, yeah, 60-40, just enough to be fair without sacrificing the uniqueness and distinction. You know, one of the things we really need to do is try to find pictures of people who are 60-40 and 65-35, just to see. It's going to be really hard to do something like that. But if we can like get like a few pictures and get an idea, because like I said, I don't know Beyonce's percentages. People say she's a Griff just by looking at her parents, but we don't know her exact percentages. Beyonce could, if she told me she was a mulata, I would have believed it. She just looks like it, dude. And I guarantee you she's beyond the 60-40 line. She's probably way, I don't know about way beyond. She's probably like 65-35 or something like that. Johnny Geezer, it's a new phenomenon now. Yeah. Jay says, I have one in my profile pic, basically a colonizer mulatto. Yeah, exactly. One Brazilian chick is fighting for Pardo rights. Yeah, Beatriz. Yeah, Beatriz. I watched a few of her videos, yeah. Jay says 70-30 is pretty much compatible in my opinion. Yeah, that's not way out there. There is a lot of people in the community who are only 35% African. Yeah, or the other way, like 35% European, something like that. Jay says he was saying that USA mulattoes are the best because they don't have nationalism and misogyny. They don't have nationalism and misogyny. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, I think he's referencing something that I'm unaware of. So I don't know what Jalen's lives always have things going down, and I'm rarely there to know what's going on. John de Geezer says 60-40 is a neo mulatto. 50 Gray Shades, you have to fit the phenotype and psychological mindset, to be honest. Yeah, the psychological part is very important. The identifying as a mulatto is very important. And yeah, physical appearance, that's going to be important too. Can I look at you and like see myself in there? Do I, obviously we're going to have different physical appearances, but there has to be some, I can't look at you and be like, oh, Anglo. Oh, Bantu, And there's going to be edge cases even if you go by physical appearance. I've seen a lot of mulattoes. At least I think they're mulattoes. They could be quadroons, I don't know. But they look damn near look like a white person, but with long hair and like maybe like long curly hair, and like big lips, So, John Nicky just says, I joke. Mulatto Genesis says, exactly. If you're 50-50 but claim black or white tea or pro-black or white tea, you aren't one of us. Definitionally you are, but you're not in our, I don't know. We don't quite have an ethnic identity yet, but that's essentially what you're referring to. Mulatto Genesis, when you say that, you're referring more to like an ethnic identity than more of a racial identity, because definitionally someone that is as you described, they would be a mulatto, but we're obviously not going to tolerate that kind of BS around us. That's more of a cultural, ethnic type of thing, Jay says, I agree. I have my mind in this already. Iberian says, mulattoes don't have the same phenotype at all. Mulatto Genesis, you calling me a bro mulattos? Jay says mulattos in the USA. Joe Garcia says, I'm only 52% Afro and 34% Euro, and you can clearly tell I'm mulatto. Yeah, I've seen, Joe has his picture right there. He's totally mulatto, and those are his percentages, yeah? And I think that's going to be, everybody's going to value certain things differently. Some people are going to value percentages more than physical appearance. Some people, physical appearance. I know Iberian says he really values physical appearance more. But, they're all things that we are going to have to take into consideration, and there's going to be edge cases. There's going to be gray areas. And yes, there are going to be exceptions made. I guarantee you, if Beyonce came out and her results were like 70-30, and she's like, you know what? I'm sick of all you people. I'm embracing the mulata identity. I guarantee you so many people would be like, yes, she's one of us now. I guarantee you, man. John DeGeezer says, I'm joking. You're a mulatto. Okay, let's see. Jay says, big lips and curly hair is automatically non-mulatto phenotype. Non-white phenotype. Oh, okay. Mulatto Genesis, they are mulatto by definition, but they are self-hating, so I don't claim them. Yeah, we don't have to necessarily. But the thing is, you'd have to specify what you mean by claim them. I wouldn't claim them as necessarily my people, like in my community, but they would still be my racial group people. Because notice how I think this is a black thing, where they don't claim people if you don't fit their ideology or their worldview. They don't claim people racially. I don't see any other racial group doing this. Maybe there is, I don't know, but I suspect that's a black thing, where they're like, I disown you racially speaking because you disagree with me. Because the Jays across the world are united, and they have so many different political views. Some of them actually practice the religion, some don't. Some do it to different degrees. I don't see a Manhattan Wall Street trader that's white saying that some hillbilly in Appalachia isn't white. You're not white. No, he's like, yeah, of course the dude's white. I just don't like him. I just don't want to be around him, White people have that kind of solidarity. Even if they despise you, they're never going to say, oh, you're not really white. You're not one of us. That doesn't happen. I think that's a bad habit that we may be picking up from black people, because they're the ones I see mainly doing that, 50 Gray Shade says, there are about 4 main phenotypes of mulattoes. I know every one of them. Oh, you think there's only 4? I would argue there's a lot more, but I would like to hear your explanation of that someday. Mulatto Genesis, they can't be in our community. Yeah, definitely. We can't tolerate that in our community. Jay says, I agree with you, Mulaton. Peter Gracia says, I agree. You need to agree with their mindset or ideology to be black if you're mixed race. Yeah. I mean, some of them will go as far as disowning even full-blooded black people. It's weird. Jay says, I'm mistaken, Iberian. I mean, big lips and curly is non-white phenotype. Mulatto Genesis says, yeah, white people stick together when it comes to race. They do compare each other, though, Nordic versus Mediterranean. Yeah, that's when they'll start getting more tribal. 50 Gray Shade says 4 main ones. Okay, I finally got to the end of the comments. Jay, I'll bring you up. I'll stop talking. Oh no, what happened to Jay? Jay, you may have to request again.
Hey brother, what's up?
It's all good. How's it going?
Good so far. I'm off today, so yes, it's time to talk and have a conversation about all topics, all identity and not just, your lives are always entertaining and educative. So yeah, it's good to the prompt earlier was very interesting.
Yeah, let me get the prompts back up. I already went through almost everything, so we may, just so the audience knows, we may be going through everything again. But let me see. I think those were the topics. But yeah, you can jump in with whatever you want, whether it's stuff from the comments or those topics. But yeah.
Yes, I want to say something. Like somebody in the comments that say that mulatto be wild. He said that American mulattoes, like USA mulattoes, are the best because we don't have misogynist behaviors. And what was the next thing he said? Like nationalism. First thing, I personally am not nationalist. Like I think most of us are not nationalists, at least in this panel. And the misogyny thing, I think it's both sides. I've seen it from both sides, so I don't know what you're talking about. That's one thing I want to say. I'm gonna address now the prompt. My adventures with the Opps. What is the topic, especially about that first part, Mulato?
Oh, the part about the Opps. That was basically me giving an overview of my experience on that live, Miss Nasty's live. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so basically I just went through the things that I observed and stuff like that. Surprisingly, there was a guy who also was on that live, and he heard me and he followed me. He was, and I had him on here earlier at the beginning of this live. He's a guy born in the Congo, raised in South Africa, and now lives in the U.S. So he was a really interesting guy, and he definitely supported us in what we were doing. But that was part of what I spoke about. But I just want to get like your perception of that live, because I think you were there and you saw a few things. But yeah, what was your view of that?
Like my view on the girls' point on the mulatto and blackness, or the conversation you had with them, or in general?
Yeah, all of the above, because I'll give you a brief overview of what I said about my observations. My observations were that we agreed on more things than I thought, and the differences I think between us was that they're very concerned with anti-Blackness and like intersectional feminism, and those two things are what make our two groups kind of conflict.
Interesting. I think also the main differences that we may have is that they are to focus on the being pro-black, like because from my understanding, you can be part of two racial group at the same time. And if you want to do it, let's go ahead. But I think they have, like, especially some of these Opps, they have the idea where since they want to be pro-black, since they want to be part of this non-anti-black movement, and they want to convince other mulattoes to also be pro-black. And the thing is, I don't think if you're advocating for your identity in mulatto as a ethnic or racial group, that should be first. Mulatto should be first. Then when you address your own issues in real life and also in social aspects, then you can talk about deeper issues like internalized racism, like anti-white and anti-black racism within the community. But I think at the first beginning of the movement, especially online, you shouldn't be talking down the whole movement and saying that we're anti-black and that we need to be pro-black. You should be saying we need to stop focusing on others people and putting down our heritage and just be proud of being mulatto. That would take that message, right? If they were advocating for us, stop being bigots, stop talking about other groups in a respective way, and be more pride on the mulatto, or proud of the mulatto heritage. That would be a very, very positive stuff. Like not only mulatto, you can say mix, right? Just for the mixed people in general, you can do that. But when the main focus is not being anti-black and being pro-black, I think there's an issue. This is where I'm very conflicted with them. I think I would never be agree with that, because there's nothing wrong with being pro-black. The thing is, that shouldn't be first. If you're advocating for something, you're advocating for your mixed heritage, and that should be first. Your identity and your mixed heritage and your experience as a mixed race person. That's my whole point, right? That's my, and I think this view I have on general will also correlate with the mulattoes face anti-blackness. I don't think mulatto face anti-blackness. First of all, certain phenotypes and certain features or physical characteristics are not only they are not specific to one group. They are not specific to black people, or they are not specific to white people. I think those physical characteristics and those physical traits and phenotypes can be present in different groups across the world, like melanated skin, curly hair, straight hair, broad nose, sharp nose, big or small lips. Both phenotypes can be found on variation of groups across the world. As you say, for example, the pygmies and the people from Papua New Guinea, those indigenous, they are not African and they are not what we would call quote unquote black, while speaking, but they have those same characteristics that people have in Western Central Africa. And it goes the same for mixed race people. You're mixed with black and white, for example, or if you're mulatto from the Latino countries, you may have other DNA, but at the end of the day, many or various of those physical characteristics, you will see them on your face, on your posture, or maybe even in your ears and your mouth shape, your bone structure. And this is not, those traits are not exclusive to one group. That's my point. So when they say that I face anti-blackness because I'm mixed with black, I think people see blackness in me. That's you may see it that way, but the case is that it's not anti-blackness. They are anti-you. They are being racist to a mixed race girl. They are discriminating you as a mixed race girl. And therefore, they are seeing your mixed race feature. They're not seeing a white girl. They're not seeing a black girl. I'm sure of that. They're seeing a mixed race girl. So my point with them is the whole narrative. They have a narrative where they are not mainly focused on the mixed race identity or the mulatto identity. They are mostly focused on being pro-black or not being anti-black. I'm 100% disagreement with that. We don't have anything to do with black. So what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty much my view, is that we are not black. So why is it that the racism that we may experience, why would it be called black anti-blackness? We are mulattoes, so you would call it anti-mulatto, anti-mulates. And so it's just absurd to me that we would do that. You wouldn't do that with any other group. So, and also I think it's just a framing issue. So we need to make sure that we are always trying to frame things with us at the center. Okay. We cannot be using words that center some other group of people. Yeah. So that's why we need to avoid these terms like anti-blackness or even like blackness in general. I don't use that term when I'm describing myself or anything like that. And it's too politically charged, and it's an obvious manipulation tactic. They want to try to bring you closer and closer to blackness so that you are then serving blackness, while they don't have to give anything in return. They're not going to serve any of our interest. So it is not worth us trying to adopt their terms that center them, nor is it any of our responsibility to fight their battles.
Yes, and also the black community is very huge. They have big potential. They have movements like Black Lives Matter. They have the civil rights movements that advocate for many of people rights in the United States, especially Afro-Americans. So they already have their own struggles and their own battles. And this is all this movement, and it's very not recent. We can say we have a couple of years going on, like from different countries, people talking about different subjects. But at the end of the day, we are comparing to the Pan-Africanism and to the Black people movement in the United States, we are very young compared to those movements. And even if we have a broad history and we have our own categories since back then, we know that existed. It's still, as a movement, it's still very young. So I don't think we should pick up their fights. They have enough people to fight those counter issues on the community. People who are stereotyping them, people who they have countless content creators. They have countless real life activists. They have countless people actually advocating. They actually have their category on the census. So I don't think, like, if she really advocating, and this is my point, if she or these Opps are really advocating for mixed race people, they wouldn't be with the pro-Black and the anti-Black points, because it's not useful to our community. It's not even useful for them as a mixed race person. And in my thing too, I don't have this, as you say, this is a monoracial behavior, Black people behavior, taking the Black people card for certain people. No, you don't think like me, so you're not Black. I know this is a Black people thing, but at the same time, we need to do some pushback because when you have young movements growing in numbers, and you will have a lot of people who are mixed race that do not identify as mulattoes, and they do not identify as mixed race either. And at some way they would want to boycott the movement. So the main tactic these people will use, because it happened in during the civil rights movement, it happened in Latin America with the Pardos, it will happen also in our movement. You will have people that will actually identify as us, be part of the movement, or at least act like they are part of the movement, to be inside, and inside of the movement, they will spread ideas that will be harmful to the core goal of the community. The core goal, Vanguard shared on his profile some of his goals, and I'm 100% sure that you have your own goals, Mulato, and many of us have different goals, and I think we all can correlate at some points that we want a physical community, and that we want the category, they want the narrow bone, the bone transplant, and also to investigate the crimes and discrimination against mixed race people. And this we may have the resource later to grow a community and do these things that can help us. But the thing is, you will have people inside the community that will act like they're part of it, that they agree with us, that they want the same thing, but at the end of the day, they will just try to spread a whole different idea to separate the movement. So we need to be aware of this. It's not about taking the Black card, or taking the mixed race card from somebody, or taking the mulatto card. It's more about having pushbacks, because you need to draw the line at some point.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's get the likes up. We got to 9.1K likes. Thank you, everybody, for liking. Let's keep it going. I also have to shill. Go follow me on YouTube, Papa Mulaton. Papa Mulaton. On YouTube, this is for my long form content. Also, I've started posting parts of the live, not the entire live, just parts of it. So you can go there to check out if you missed a live or something like that. But this is a good place to go see stuff beyond just the shorts, because on TikTok, I just have all my really short form content. But if you want more long form stuff, go check it out there, Papa Mulaton. Okay, so I wanted to address the part about interlopers, because 50 Gray Shade says interlopers will be a thing. He has a point. Yeah. One of the things I think we need to be a little more cautious of is who we start inviting to like group chats and stuff, because one of the things I learned with talking to the Opps is that they love taking screenshots, and they're all up in various group chats taking screenshots and stuff like that. And so we definitely have to be a lot more restrictive about that. I don't think we need to just start inviting a bunch of people just to inflate the numbers. I'd rather have a small group of people that we can trust and rely on than just have max out the freaking group chat so that it looks like we have like this huge community. So definitely have to be a little more restrictive about that. And yeah, whenever there's an interloper, whenever there's someone who's like lurking, you just kick them out, just get them out of there. And also naturally, some people are going to be genuine with their intentions. Like they're new to this, and then they come across like our content, and so they join us and they think this is right for them, and then they realize, actually no, and then they'll have to go. But that's fine. That's totally fine. I would rather, have that situation than be way too restrictive and then we never have an opportunity to grow. So there is a fine line we have to walk between being open to newcomers, but then also being cautious of people who will deliberately try to sabotage us and cause all kinds of confusion within our space. And one of the reasons why I joined that live with Miss Nasty was because, like, Tamishi's a mulata. A lot of them, Creole mulatres, a lot of them are mulatas. And I don't like the fact that we have these basically two mulatto groups, but we're not together. We're not on the same page. Now, I'm not saying we have to be together. We have to do that or anything. But one of the things I don't like is that we both, for the most part, have the same identity. We agree on so many things, but then we're gonna be enemies and stuff like that. So I at least want to make my attempt to extend an olive branch to them and be like, hey, can we at least have, at least somewhat cordial relations? We don't necessarily have to be all buddies and pals and friends or anything. We don't have to invite you to the group chats. But can we at least not be like doxing each other or like pulling up people's profile pics and then just like roasting them and shit like that? Because that's what they were doing at one point. Go ahead, Jay.
I personally, first, there's an issue. You see the talking about the woman, I don't like that. It's not only about the mulatto stuff, it's in general. I don't like bad talking women. That's not maybe the way I was raised by my mother or my father.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
There's a lot of dudes on all groups in all space. And eventually Vanguard was talking about it yesterday. And I'm also in a group chat in Instagram where they were constantly talking about women, especially mulatto women. And I think in general, like we shouldn't talk about women in such ways, like especially policing who they date, talking about who they date or who they don't. That's not our business. We shouldn't be talking about the mulatto females, whether if the ghetto or if they're doing something who's not mulatto whatsoever. I think that's weak. That make us look weak. We should be focusing on leveling up ourselves. I go to the gym, try some business, move to the country, do something, and eventually females gonna be around you. And if it happens to be a mulatto, you're winning, But I don't like this whole talking about the girls, because I personally say something on the group chats where you were in Mulaton, but I wasn't referring specific to mulatas. I was referring to females in general, because, the conversation I had is that, for example, if a guy had a preference, right? And for example, he don't have, let's say, he don't have the same luck he have with certain type of woman, and he get with another type of woman, we shouldn't shame this person for doing so. It's the same thing with females. Sometimes people just date whoever is better for them. I advocate for all people dating each other. That's the best thing. But when it's not the case, we should not shame the woman or talk about them. It's the same way we should not shame the men or the males and talk about them. We should not be focusing more with dating, because sometime in these group chats, you may have people like Miss Justin. She at the beginning, she might be part of the movement. What I believe about her? I think she was part of the movement. She was in the group chats and she saw some stuff that actually disappointed her, and she ended up leaving. So I think we need to have those females on our side, right? Because they at the end of the day, they are the ones that also will have a larger platform in the future, and they will be able also to support the movement. We have a group of females in the movement that they understand and they are always supporting us, but some people have different mindset. They don't have to be agree with everything, but we need to be a little bit more, let's say, inclusive. When I say inclusive, I'm not referring to the other group of people. I'm not referring to other races or other mixes. I'm referring to the ideologies. because we cannot all have the same mindset. We cannot all think the same way. You understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I understand about the interlopers, but with the whole dating stuff, and we need to be very careful and cautious with that.
Yeah, let me read some comments. Let's see. 50 Gray Shade says, "This is just TikTok, thank God. Only vetted mulatos will be in offline spaces." Yeah, definitely anything offline, the vetting has to be like top tier. Jordan, what's up? Says, Bantulatas are playing in our faces. Yeah. 50 Gray Shade says, "We have women here with us though. For the ones who don't want to be here, that's fine." Yeah, I'm fine with, anybody that doesn't feel like this is a space for them, that's fine. If you think we're not centering Black people enough, okay. I like the route that we're on because we've really balanced things here. I don't think we're anti-Black. I don't think we're anti-white. We're also not pro-Black. We're also not pro-white. There's no hatred here. So, these people just think, if you're not worshiping Black people, then you're anti-Black people, and that's just not the case. But Jay, to your point, let me ask you a question. Would you still criticize someone like Dr. Umar, who's with mulata, who's pro-Black but with a mulata? Would you still criticize some guy that's pro-Black but has like a white girlfriend?
Well, I will not criticize him.
But do you see a problem with that? Do you think that's hypocritical of that guy, the most pro-Black guy you can think of, and then he's got a white woman? Do you think there's a problem with that? I'm not saying would you interfere in his life and say, hey, you need to do X. I'm just saying as an outsider, you'll never come in contact with that guy. But you see the most pro-Black guy, freaking Al Sharpton, second coming of Martin Luther King, and then he's got some like Norwegian girl by his side. Does that not strike you as a little odd?
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of hypocritical, It's very hypocritical. But I don't think like the direction of all movement is the same as the Pan-Africanists. Like, what is the name of this guy? Like Dr. Umar. It's not the same at all. We are not advocating for the same thing. Basically, we are actually advocating for us to be correctly identified, and we are sharing our experience as mixed race people. We are not, that is not the same context. I believe so. But
Gotcha.
Of course, it's hypocritical. I know it's hypocritical, but I don't think for us having the same approach as monoracial people gonna be helpful to us.
Hey, Dulce, she says definitely hypocritical. Yep. Yeah, I agree. ¿Cómo estás, Dulce? Let's see. John de Geezer says definitely not pro or anti. Yeah. 50 Gray Shade says, great live, guys. I'll be here same time tomorrow. Awesome. Thank you 50 Gray Shades for being here, for contributing. Thank you so much. Dulce, thank you for all the gifts. I appreciate it. Freaking Stengle SpongeBob. Thank you, everybody. We're at 11K likes. Let's get it up. The thing is, though, I'm kind of on the fence of this. I don't know how to go about it, Jay, but I think whenever I look at people that are pro-YT or pro some other group. Oh, we got Dulce here. She's Dominican, I believe. I've even seen like Dominicans, King Macho. I've seen King Macho say, what was it? Dominicanas para Dominicanos, something like that. Dominican women for Dominican men. Dominicans have no problems finding, at least to my knowledge, I'm not sure. Dominicans don't really have much problems finding a Dominican partner. Pro-YT people, they're usually almost never with a Black girl. Pro-YT guys are almost never with a mulata. And so I think when it comes to our space and what we're trying to do, I agree that I know you agree with me, Jay, that the goal, the standard is that for us to be together, mulatos together, creating groups and families. But I feel like at some point you're going to have to be like, hey, Why aren't you with a mulatto partner, man or woman? Why don't you have a mulatto boyfriend? Why don't you have a mulatto girlfriend? You know, and I think this is one of the areas where goals are very important, because if your goal is purely online stuff, okay, and I'm starting to notice this, that, you know, with Vanguard and Mindset putting out like their goals, I'm starting to notice that if your goal is something purely online, then yeah, what you said, Jay, makes total sense. You wouldn't be telling people, or you wouldn't be saying you have a problem with someone's, you know, dating choices, because it's just online. We're just trying to create an online group chat where we can all talk, you know, and then have lives where we can all talk. But when you have a goal such as mine, a community, that cannot fly. You cannot have a mulatto community and no mulattoes are together. This guy's got a freaking Mexican girlfriend. This girl, she's got herself a white guy. This guy, he's got a freaking Asian. Like, Chinatown doesn't have that problem. To my knowledge, Chinatown doesn't have that problem. Chinese people don't have a problem in their community of dating Chinese people. Maybe, yeah, every now and then you'll have somebody dating outside the race, but I don't think it's like a widespread thing. Jews don't have this problem. I mean, Jace. So do you see where I'm coming from, Jay, on that?
I agree with you. It makes total sense. But as I say, I think all communities should have a different approach than monoracial groups. Because our foundation, like mulatto people, our foundation in the modern day, it's merely impossible for us to have an identity or to push the same idea as monoracial groups. We need to have our own race, our own groups, and own communities, but with a different approach. We need to understand that diversity and those mix we have with European and African, some of us have a little bit native, and because we know of the Hispanic roots, we need to understand that we come from mixing, right? That doesn't mean we're gonna throw each other on the bus. No, I'd rather date a white girl. That's not nice. That is hypocritical. You understand? This is very hypocritical. No, I'd rather date a black guy, or I'd rather date a black girl. That is very hypocritical. But in my case, for example, my experience, most of my experience have been with mestizas, like white-looking mestizas from Venezuela, and also mulatas, very looking mulattas from Venezuela. Most of my past relationships, and like I had in Venezuela, like I can say I didn't have that much girlfriend. I only have like 4 girlfriends in my whole life since I was in high school. I'm 27, by the way, so like 3 of them were mulatas. I can say quadroons, 2 mulatas, and 1 mestiza, white mestiza. So I had experience with mulatas, but if it happened in my life, right, I met somebody who I fell in love with, and she, let's say, is a quadroon, or let's say she's a mestiza again, or let's say she's white, I cannot, let's say, it's not that I prefer them, it's that this happened and I'm in love with this person. Or let's say she's Arab or Pakistani, or let's say she's Chinese. Sometimes those things happen. And of course, I will always look for what I can get. Most of the time, I'm good getting people who look like me, who are actually from the same place or the same countries, who speak the same language. And if it happens that I move to another place and I get, let's say, with a black American, or I get with a mulatto Americans, or I also can get with a white American, and I wouldn't feel like I'm betraying my race because of that. Because it's not that I prefer them over my own race. It's just that I get with this person because this is a person that loves me at the moment. You understand what I'm saying? So that's how I see it, right? If a female, a mulatto females do the same thing, I'm not gonna shame her either. Because if you can attract these mulatto females, they would rather be with you, you know? So
yeah. Let me read comments real quick. Dulce, I see you. I'll bring you up after I read these comments real quick. Jordan says, I lived in my town for 10 years now. First time seeing a mulata woman here. She was maybe in her 60s. Wow. Yeah, where I live, it's probably even rarer. I did see a mulatto guy when I was at, I think it was like at the post office or something. And I was like, whoa. It was like seeing a celebrity, because like we're so rare out here, man. But yeah, Johnny Geezer says, yeah, you make a point. If you're actually building an actual community outside the internet, you can't let foreigners infiltrate. Yeah, you have to have some standards. You know, what's the point of having a mulatto community if we're all just gonna, you know, mix with the rest of the world? You know, that's not to say that, like, let's say someone, like you said, Jay, like decides to have or they can't find a mulatto partner, let's say, and then they get with like, I don't know, like a white girl or something. Like, okay, that's fine. You know, you live your life. You got to do what's in your best interest, but we're not going to be able to have a community with that mentality. And if that keeps happening, now you could make the argument that, hey, like, if you can't get a mulata, the next best thing would be like a black girl or a white girl, or something like that, or maybe even a mestiza. But man, that's tough.
The thing is, whenever I say this, like the concept, the pushback to this, to this talking point is that, oh, it's because maybe the person cannot get a mulatto or mulatto partner. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes I'm telling you, most of my exes are either mulattoes or mestizas, like Venezuelan specifically. I've never dated somebody outside of Venezuela. I never dated someone in Trinidad.
Oh, come on! You don't want a Bantu Trini? Come on.
I don't really like them. I don't really think we have like a.
It was a joke, Jay. It was a joke, Jay. You don't have to explain yourself. It was a joke. Just keep going.
Very pretty. No, listen. They're very pretty. They're pretty. Like there's chicks here that are very pretty. They're very bad. They have.
No one said they're not. No one said they're not, Jay.
No. The thing is, I just don't like Trinis. I just don't.
Okay. It was a joke. Keep going.
I understand that. The point is, whenever I say the stuff, people be going like, "Oh, why you don't take?" Because maybe the person just can get. It's just not that they cannot get with a mulatto. Just in love with someone that is not mulatto. I don't think there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. Iberian says, Jay, no other group talks like that. They generally can find partners. Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed. Like outside of like black people, no group like talks like that. And now I will admit though, Iberian, that in some of our cases, it is very hard to like find anybody. Like you would have to like dedicate a lot of time and resources to go out finding people. But hey, Iberian, like I said, I plan next year on traveling and meeting some of you guys, traveling the country. So you say there's a lot of mulatas out there where you're at, Iberian. So I'm gonna head your way at some point, and then I'll see. Jordan says let's hop on a live after talk. Maybe Jay can join. Iberian says I have to get on my other account. This one got banned again.
I just think, guys. Go ahead.
Hold on a sec. Dulce says that was by mistake. Oh, okay. Let's see. Jay says I don't understand, bro. Most of my exes were mulata and mestiza. Okay, yeah, you explained that. Yeah, everybody's laughing. Jordan says, Jay, don't explain. You're good. That was so funny, wasn't it? Iberian, then move to an area where you can find somebody. Yeah, that's for me, that's probably what it's gonna have to be, or like travel, put a lot more effort, because here where I live, like Jay, I'm kind of similar to you, similar to your situation in Venezuela. Like there's a lot of mestizas around here. I could find myself a white girl or a mestiza. I don't mind that, but obviously my preference would be to get a mulata, you know? Iberian says, I can understand somebody who is a different mix, like black and Arab, having an insane time. Yeah, that one's a little tough. Yeah.
I think, Mulato, this is the thing. Like, I think we should be advocating for it. We should be advocating for us dating each other, because it's not that hard. As I say, for me, it's not hard. And matter of fact, for example, in Trinidad, you have a lot of mixed girls, like mulatas. You have a lot of white girls. You have a lot of. But the thing is, it's a culture thing. Like my culture in Trinidad, I don't like Trinis, honestly. I don't like the way they portray themselves. They are very cocky. They feel like they are Anglos. They feel like they're English. It's like I just don't fuck with them. And that's the thing. That's why, for example, I don't see myself with somebody from here. Sometimes you live in a place and the people who like you the most, it's not that you might be able to get a mulata. They might be the best partner, but sometimes a mulata, for example, she might encounter somebody that loves her and he's not a mulatto. and we don't have to shame her for that. That's my whole point. You know what I'm saying? I don't have
Yeah.
any issue finding mulattoes, you know?
I agree with the idea of not shaming someone if they found someone they love and they found whatever, you know. The only thing I don't want us to slip into is becoming like a lot of these pro-black people where everybody's pro-black, but ain't nobody got like a black girlfriend or boyfriend. Everybody's got like some you know, wife or husband from some other race. Like, you know, I think you know, this could be a whole live discussion on its own. So there's a lot of angles to look at this, but you know, you can't build a community like that. And so if the goal is online stuff, then that's fine. You can, you know, I have no problem like having people in our space currently who have boyfriends or girlfriends from other races. That's not an issue for me. But when but it does become an issue, and maybe this is more so, I don't know, on the content creators. I don't know, like if you're out here making content and then you got like some person from another race, like, you know, okay, like technically there's not a problem with that because you're a mulatto. And so you have every right to be pro mulatto and create content and stuff like that. But I wouldn't feel right if like I like was like, you know, turning on my camera and then right there is like some like Indian girl or something like that, you know. Like I wouldn't feel right trying to create a community, and that's what I have. So, you know, there's going to be different standards for everybody, and I don't fault people who have made their best effort to find a mulatto boyfriend or girlfriend and then failed, because, you know, you can even find you can go to a place with a whole bunch of mulattos and then you're just not compatible with some of those people. There's so many factors to take into consideration. So I totally understand that. But, you know, I don't know. This is why one of the things I was talking about is like, what do you do whenever you can't find your person? You know, what are the next best options?
Black and white or African European. This is essentially like the terms, like how people should refer themselves, correct?
Yeah.
I think African and European sounds like much more better. Like white and black can mean different things in different places. You know?
Wait, Jay, you just completely changed the subject.
What?
You just
black and white, the black, white, or African European? I don't. Like, can you explain? Sorry.
No, so I'm not going off of the prompts. I'm just go off of what I just said. The prompt is something different.
Oh, what do you say? Like you were talking about the mulatto dating?
Yeah, the mulatto dating thing.
Yeah, with the mulatto dating, I already gave my whole point. I think I kind of agree with you, but I think we should advocate for mulatto dating mulattoes. For me, it's not a problem. I don't think none of us gonna have an issue with that. It's just that sometimes it's not that you didn't find somebody else. It's just that you get to the person, you're in love with the person, and this person, like on all, let's say, consensus, it's not mulatto. And I think that we shouldn't feel guilty about that. It's a human thing. And I think advocating for a positive thing and for all group of people, we will always have people that are going to procreate with each other. We are mulattoes. We'll always have mulattoes burned from black and white people. And we will always exist. Mulattoes have been existing for the past 200 years. So I think we can still advocating and for mulatto dating each other, and also somebody can have a different partner, and that shouldn't be an issue in our community. That's my opinion. You know, I think it's okay to advocate for it, to push for it, but when you have people that are very militant and make it seem like it have to be a norm or a rule, it's kind of weird. It doesn't seem like it's not. I see it weird. You know, that's my view.
Okay.
Especially my focus is not for Aussie males, because I know we move like that, we joke like that, you know, I don't really care. But it's more like the females. Like I'm more worried about the females, more focused on the females, because I don't want none of us going to these girls, shaming these girls, or because they're dating somebody who's not mulatto. I think we should do our best. In this case, if you want to date somebody who's mulatto, you should do your best and attract that person. You know, should do your best to attract mulatto females, not shaming one of them who's not dating somebody who look like you. I think that's my main focus point, because I know we joke like that. I don't really care, you know.
Gotcha. Johnny Geezer says, Cape Verde and get yourself a woman who dance funana. I don't know what funana is, but I bet it's something very sensual. Yeah, Cape Verde, Brazil. You're lucky though, Johnny Geezer. You're actually from that region. Let's see. Johnny Geezer says, I joke, lol. Iberian says, Jay, nobody talks like this in other communities, especially if they have money. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you to an extent, Iberian. I do have to admit though that it's just we're kind of rare, we're kind of hard to find, and I mean, dude, what if you find yourself a mulata and she's like, don't call me that, I'm black. What are you gonna do, you know?
Not only that, Mulato, the thing is, I think Iberian, and yeah, I agree with him, but in a lot of points, there's things that we are not considering. Like when you're dating life is not only trying to mate and procreate for children. Sometimes you just fell in love with people. You know, you just fell in love with a girl. Especially if you go somewhere, you might find people attractive, mulattoes. Don't tell me that the only type you have is mulattoes. That's not realistic. You have many types, and mulatta is your favorite. Is the number one, right? And at some point, you might get with a mulatta, but let's say this relationship ends, and you get with somebody, and that person is not mulatta, right? That's nothing wrong. When you say nobody talks like that, it's the total opposite, because you have white dudes traveling to other countries to specifically date outside of their race. So the whole notion of us dating with that's a new thing. So I think that's internet shit too, because a lot of people date outside of their race. This is why we exist. I think that you guys in Iberia, you need to see the bigger picture. Yes, we have to advocate for us dating each other, but dating outside shouldn't be something that we shame or be ashamed of. That's my point, you know?
I gotcha. So I don't know if you had answered my question, but I was this is something that I'd like everybody's opinion on. Is like, what do you the next? I guess, would you agree that the next best options are dating like a black woman, a white woman, or a mestiza, or what do you think?
Like if it's to preserve, because I asked you a question, right? Because I had this girl who was Levanting. I think we're going together to Spain, right? But the thing is, it would be hard for me to not call this baby mulattoes, and technically it wouldn't be mulattoos. If we have a have, I'm not saying we're gonna have, but if we have a have,
damn, Jay's already planning a family and everything.
If we ever have, you never know, bro. I mean, we know each other from a very long time, and that's the thing. Since before I was dating with other girls, I was in a relationship with other girls. She was my friend, and that's the issue. And if that ever happened, it would be hard for me to not call this baby mulattoes. But technically, there wouldn't be mulattoes. You know, there would be half mulatto and half Levantine. And if for me, I would rather have mulatto babies. You know, that's the thing. You know, mulatto, I want to have mulatto babies. But if you have somebody who's very special, you know this person from a very long time, even if you already had mulatto partners, and those partners have also been great, but it's just that was something from your, let's say, your teen, like when you was adolescent, you know, the adolescence, and you grew up now and you're still a friend with this person. If you ever had a family with this person, you know, I don't feel I should be feeling guilty about that. You know, I don't feel like I'm a race traitor. Like, this is a very white supremacy and a black, bigger type of mentality. I think we should be better than those two groups, you know, in this aspect at least.
Okay. Let me ask you this though. Do you think it's still weird? What if everybody in this space, everybody like all of us, eventually just all have non-mulatto boyfriends and girlfriends? That's a little weird, right?
Well, that would be very weird. I don't think all of us are gonna do it. I mean, that's that's like one case scenario. Like it can be one me, you, Iberian, but it would be weird if all of us do it. But I don't think. I don't know, bro. I
Because
think we should go ahead.
so the reason I bring it up is because I don't know too many people in this space that like are in a relationship, and the few that are, I think all of them are not with a mulatto. Even the other groups too, because like Miss Nasty said she's like with a white guy, you know. The other ladies on that panel, some of them have children, but I don't know like the racial makeup of those children, what their husband or boyfriend was racially speaking. But you know, even though we do a very good job of promoting like mulatto couples, ain't none of us in a mulatto couple.
Well, I think that's something that we can work on. I personally, I have no problems. I say again, if I was in Venezuela right now, I would probably be dating someone because, as I say again, I find Venezuelan women way more attractive than Trinidad.
Hey, por cierto, if Trump gets rid of Maduro, you going back?
Yes, for sure. I'm actually planning to go back because for me to leave Trinidad and travel to Spain, I want to pass to Venezuela and I have some things to fix first before I go to Spain. So yeah, I probably will have to go back. I have to get my documentation for the high school, you know, like the qualification and stuff, you know, so I can apply for the visa, the student visa. So I will most likely have to go back for a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
yes, I will go. I will go to Venezuela, especially if Maduro is gone. Yes, for sure. I have no issue, and I have more success in Venezuela because I feel like it's that cultural thing, like the language, the females. I like more the style, the flavor. Like I find Trinidad girls are too rough. You know, I like even the mixed race or any type of girls. I mean, like the girls in general. I don't see it like a race. I think it's just the culture. They're English, and I think I would be more compatible with an American mixed race person, an American girl, rather than a Trini. The Trinis are very rough, like the Jamaicans, the Vincents, very rough. I don't like the Caribbean, like West Indian type of girls. It's not my type. No, I'm not talking trash about them. Just it's not my preference. I would prefer, let's say, my own culture. Like, and I've never had any issue dating mixed race girls or mestizas. It's just now it happened. I met somebody who's also Venezuelan, and she was born in the country. Well, I know her from a long time. She was born in the country, but she have like half Persian, half Levantine, and she's not like a mestiza or any of that. She's a whole different thing, you know. I don't know what to think. I'd rather, bro. Trust me. I want to have mulatto babies. I want to call my son mulatto, but I can't do it. So, what I have to do, mulatto, I have to choose. I have to choose my race or love. You know, it's about love or race. So,
you know, for me, it's you know, love is in the equation, but also it's like, man, like I would want to raise my kids a specific way, and let's just say I'm a little more traditional, yeah, and to me, like raising kids, having a family with my values and my morals is more important than the racial makeup, you know? And now, obviously, the racial makeup is an important thing, but I can't be with someone who doesn't share my morals and share my values, you know? And that's something I'm unwilling to sacrifice. The cultural thing, like that's something I could compromise on, you know? I don't mind being someone who's not, you know, Hispanic or a mulata that's got a completely different cultural background. But like, you know, the morals thing, that's something that just can't be compromised. And that's why I think that just makes things a lot harder when you're trying to find someone from your specific racial group, and you're already kind of a rare kind of racial group. And then, okay, but now they also have to have my values and my morals. That's, oh man, that makes it so much harder. And yeah, I agree with John de Geezer. He says the mulattos are the best. Yes, they are.
I agree with you. I agree with him too. 100%. I want to address something like the two last line of the prompt, like the European African. Um, is that about if it's correct black and white or European African? I think it's more accurate African European, because black and white can mean different things in different contexts. But this is in regards to mulatto identity, or it's something else?
Yeah, you're right. It's about the mulatto identity. Because I agree, like African and European are a little more accurate. I'm not opposed to using black and white if it's an informal conversation and you're just trying to get someone to understand something real quick, But if you're having like a more of a deeper discussion, if you're really trying to be precise as possible, I'm not saying African and European are the most precise, but they are more precise than saying black and whites, because like I said, you're going to find a lot of mestizos that identify as white or are classified as white. Oh, and just as a quick aside, something I didn't realize about the recent change to the census. So for those of you who don't know, they recently changed the census, and now Middle Eastern and North African have been moved out of the white category, and now they have their own category. And so now Arabs and Israelis are no longer white. If you respect the government's designations, they are no longer white now. And so I remember, Jay, we were having this conversation about a certain group of people. Well, now Israelis, it's specifically Israelis, it says Israelis are now no longer white. They are now in the MENA category.
I know what you're talking about. They are MENA. That's the new category?
Yeah, MENA, Middle Eastern North African, MENA, MENA. I don't know how they want to pronounce it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think we can have a mulatto box too. I think that would be very interesting.
Have a
We
what?
should have a mulatto option,
You already know how I feel about that. I don't care about that. But for those of you who are very interested in that, go look into how they managed to get that change to the census. You've now got a perfect example, a perfect template for how to put mulatto on the census. I haven't looked into how they did it, but damn near took over 20 years is what I'll say. Damn near took over 20 years, and they did a lot more than a freaking petition. I'll tell you that. Did a lot more than that.
Wow, bro. Well, I don't think we kind of cook. I think we still can do it, but wow, 20 years, bro, that's insane.
And also notice, it's a group category. It's not a singular race category. And that's one of the things I've noticed about if you pay attention to the census things, we kind of tend to view white and black as a single group, and we can debate that, but that's beside the point. But look at all the other racial categories. Pacific Islander is all in one group, but they're all different kinds of groups. Now they have this new MENA category, Middle Eastern, North African, which now includes Israelis, Egyptians, Saudi Arabians, Pakistanis, Iranians, Moroccans, all these people. And they didn't all, those are different races in there. Okay, I'm not saying those are the specific races, but in that, all of those groups, those are different races, but they got a category for this very large group. And so one of the things that I'm thinking of, and again, I actively don't want mulatto on the census, but one of the things I will tell y'all about strategy is that you are more likely to get a change on the census if you make it into a generic mixed race category than if you were to make it into a solely a mulatto category. So if you were to say, hey, we want to change to the census, and this is for mixed race people, specifically mulatos, hapas, sambaigos, and I don't know, mestizos or whatever, and start, it's more likely to happen if it's a broad group like that. But I think a very specific thing, I don't see that happening. John DeGeezer says, must have required a lot of money. Oh, I guess to change it. Yeah, like I said, I didn't look into the specifics of what they did, but I think they started doing this in the 90s. So it may be 30 years. 20, maybe 30 years.
Well, we can still advocating for that, Mulato. By the time we're 50, we already have a community. We will have the checkbox. That's not a bad idea. You know?
But so all I did was just a surface level research into how to get a change on the census. Yeah. So everything I'm about to say comes from ChatGPT. So take it with a grain of salt. I didn't do any further research beyond this. It seems to me that in order to have something on the census, you have to have the community first, because the Office of Management and Budget looks at a long list of things. They don't even have to recognize your petition. You literally could go with a petition of 1 million signatures. They are under no legal obligation to recognize that, or even acknowledge it, take any action. But they have a long list of things. And some of these things were like, oh, you need to have like a culture and, verify that this is actually necessary, that this would actually make some kind of improvement for your people. And you have to demonstrate that you have a community. And it's like, it was basically verifying what I was saying.
Mulato, I agree with you 100%. I think we need to have the community first. That's why I say by the time we're 50 years old, we already have physical communities, and then we can have but I believe, how it can be easy too. Like, for example, you see these people who have, they have the right, they have the lawyers, and they work in this office, and they are ones to approve the racial classification. If we have people in those places, in those positions, I think it would be much more easier for us to, because let's say you have a white person who disagree with our views, or a black person in those offices that they say, like, you're just black. The people are never gonna approve this, what we are advocating for. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the opposition in society also have to do with the power and the influence we have. So if we have people in certain offices and certain positions, even in the racial classification conversation, I think we will be much more easier for us. People will mind, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Also take into consideration how long Middle Eastern and North African people have been in the country and have had their communities, and then how long it took them to get the change on the census. So, we've had Israelis here in America for a long time. We've had all kinds of Arabs here, Egyptians, Syrians, and stuff like that. We've had like Muslim communities in general. I know they're not all Muslim, but we've had Muslim communities in general in America for a long time. And then, like I said, look how long it took them to get a change to the census. And so, like I said, it confirmed my bias. I was from the beginning saying that the community has to come first. ChatGPT agreed with me, but again, it's ChatGPT, so take it with a grain of salt. Like, I would suggest, since y'all are more, y'all care more about the census and y'all actively want that, I would suggest y'all just look into how they were able to make that change to the census, and that would be basically your guideline. But I guarantee you, what you'll discover is that it's going to require significantly more effort than you realize, and it will distract you from creating a community. And I think I think ChatGPT was right. I think it agrees with me that a community has to come first, and that becomes the justification to making a change on the census. But I don't know, y'all look into it.
Well, I think you was right on that. I think at this point we all have to be agree. You was right, and it makes, like, if you think about it now, it makes more sense. Like, you can have this first. You need to have this in order to have this. So yeah, I agree with you. It makes more sense. So
yeah, because like, why would they say, hey, yeah, let's put this category on the census, and this group of people don't even have a community. You know, they're not going to view that as a justifiable reason to change the United States Census. You know, John DeGeezer says have economic and political power. Yeah, I'm not sure what the full requirements were, but yeah, I mean, you know, hey, they had Arab and I guess Somali wouldn't count. I was thinking of Ilhan Omar, but she's not. She wouldn't fit in that category. I think she would probably fit in the black category. But you've had politicians that were Arab. I know we have a Palestinian descendant politician and stuff like that in office. I'm averse to political power. I don't like it, but I agree on the economic power. I think we should definitely have some good finances going. Yeah. But you know, it's whatever. Community.
But I feel like sorry, go ahead, Mulato.
No, I was just gonna say community comes first. That's it.
No, community comes first 100%. But I think also if you have people in position of power, that's also we can talk about economical power, people in office. We can talk about political power. It would be much more easier for us. A lot of things, especially racial classification, like laws and etc. I think that would be a lot, because when you can fight directly with the system for a numerical, let's say for a numerical issue, you can always infiltrate or always join the system, right? So if we have people, let's say for example, let's say Vanguard, who's very literate, let's say other people who are very intelligent and who have this knowledge when graduates, and they have, let's say, a doctorate or a master in law. Let's say they have a big position in power and they have the same ideas as us. Like they probably mulatto, they know the meaning of the word, the history behind it. That would be much more, but that would be very beneficial for us. Like these people will make things very easy for us. So we need people like this in those positions. I think it's a pro, you know.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're not going to have enough time for the final topic. I was planning on destroying you, Jay, on that issue, but we'll have to save it for another day. But do you have any final thoughts, final things you want to say before we end it?
Yeah, it was a good live road, and thank you for having me up. Nice conversation as always, very educative and meaningful topics. So yeah, that was nice. Thank you for having me up.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, just a reminder, everybody, we do this every Friday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. So come by, give us your 2 cents. I like hearing from everybody. I like talking with y'all. So I will catch y'all next time.